Okay, we are recording.
Okay, thanks. I'll call the meeting to order. It's the September 15, 2020 meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission for the town of Fairfield. It's becoming all too common to say thanks for bearing with us during this time of remote WebEx platform. First item on our agenda is meeting minutes from August 11th, 2020. It's difficult to see.
Mr. Chairman, I was not there.
All right. Did you watch the tapes from the last meeting?
Yes.
All right, so then you're fully up to speed then.
All right.
Excellent. Can I have a motion on the minutes? Commissioner Noonan? Very
I
good.
move to approve.
So motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner Corcoran. Thank you, guys. So we had fairly light agenda, and I don't see any changes that are necessary.
This is Tommy Noonan. I agree. I didn't see any changes.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments or questions on the minutes? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Well, the minutes are adopted unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next item is 350 Quincy Street. It's a referral regarding the town acquisition of property. Mr.
I'm going to ask, I know Mark Barnhart was going to join us, perhaps by cell. Emmeline, I don't know if we see him in the caller list. Mark, if you can unmute yourself if you're there. I will.
Okay. Why don't we? You want to text him and?
Yeah, I'm gonna let me shoot him a text and see what his deal is, and then we can come back to that.
Okay. Do we need a motion to table for the moment, or should we just?
I don't think that's necessary, Mr. Chairman. I think you can just pass by that and then return.
All right, we'll come back to that one. Next is 4185 Black Rock Turnpike, request of attorney Christopher Smith for a 5-year extension of a special permit site plan.
Okay, Jim Went for the record, Mr. Chairman. On October 27th of 2015, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved a zone change from Neighborhood Design District and AAA to Design Commercial District and a special permit for the construction of a 25,000 square foot medical office building on this site. This is the former plant factory property across the street from the Hi-Ho Motel. The applicant is seeking a 5-year extension of the site plan that accompanied that special permit application. You did see some correspondence recently about some recent wetlands activity there. What that dealt with was not the application that was approved in 2015 that is the subject of this particular request for extension. There was a proposal that went back to wetlands for a potential residential use. In the correspondence that you received had to do with whether or not the Wetlands Commission thought that that proposal was consistent or not consistent with the site disturbance that was approved under the original wetlands permit. That has been resolved, but in any case, any future application for this site for use other than the medical office would require a new application to this commission. So what's before you this evening is simply a request to for a 5-year extension of the site plan to give an option of that proposal to continue to move forward. And unless there's any questions, that's all I have at this point.
Okay. Well, I do have a couple questions, but why don't we, I guess, get a motion on the table so we can talk about it. Commissioner
Tommy
Noonan.
Noonan, move to approve. Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan. Second by Commissioner Corcoran. Okay. So
Mr. Chair, if you have questions, go right ahead.
okay, thanks. I appreciate it. So, Mr. Wen, I note the letter in the file from Fair Plan identifying, issues that they believe were significant or substantial. I don't know if significant is the right word. Substantial or material changes to the site plan. I know you said that has been resolved, but I think what you mean is that the conservation resolved their application, not necessarily whether there were substantial or material changes, right?
Correct. What the substance of the correspondence that you received has to do with an application that may or may not come before this commission in the future for an alternative use to the site other than the medical office building that had been previously approved. That change to the proposal was submitted to the Conservation Commission, but that future application would require a new application to this commission. So it's not really the confusion of what went on from the wetlands perspective has to do with an application that would need to be the subject of a future submittal to this commission. What they're simply asking for here is to extend the life of the site plan that was approved in 2015, so that the applicant chooses to go forward with that approval, they have the opportunity to do so. If they're going to seek a different utilization of the property, they would need to make a brand new application to this commission.
Yeah, so the letter identifies that the application before wetlands conservation apparently was intended to be minor alteration, and I guess conservation decided that it was substantial by a majority vote, and so therefore the applicant simply acquiesced to that, and so now it's understood that any further application would have to come before us if they wanted to make those changes.
Well, the changes to the potential use of the property would have to come before this commission as a new application, regardless of whatever finding the Wetlands Commission made. There was a submittal for an alternative plan that the Conservation of the Inland Wetlands Commission initially felt was sufficiently different that it warranted a new application. The applicant challenged that, and they ended up with a settlement agreeing that the footprint of the previous site plan would be adhered to with the new application. But again, that's not, in my opinion, germane to the application that would have to ultimately be filed before this commission.
And I do understand that. Seeing that the application before conservation went to litigation and there was a settlement agreement, and that's not in front of me, right? I mean, I remember this. I remember 4185 Black Rock, but all we have, right, is the letter requesting the extension of time as of right. And I get that we would be acting on the prior approved site plan, right? So even if there were, and this is where I think I understand your point, even if there was an application to conservation with changes to the site plan, that is not what we have been asked to grant an extension on in this application, correct?
That is correct.
Right. Okay. I mean, with that explanation, I think it's pretty clear. I do think we ought to make it clear in our decision, in our approval of this application, that we are granting the extension on the site plan as it was previously approved by us, and not with respect to any amended plan that might have been submitted before the Conservation Department. Does that sound like a proper way to describe this,
Yes, I think that's understood, but we can certainly confirm that should you vote to approve the extension, it's based on the site plan that was approved in October of 2015.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. And I mean, it's important to make it clear to the members of the public and especially, Fair Plan that obviously has a concern that somehow our approval might be misconstrued as being relative to that, amended or not amended, that somewhat different site plan that was presented to conservation. So just to make sure we make that clear. All right. Any other commissioners have any? Yes, Commissioner Brayman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two procedural questions. Yes, in the first instance, does Attorney Smith have an opportunity to respond to Commissioner's questions on this application since he submitted the letter to the Commission, which I have reviewed?
I appreciate the question, and that's why I was framing my questions to Mr. Wendt the way that I was. So this has been submitted as a compliance, right? I mean, it's this is for action, administrative action by the Commission, and under that process, the answer is no, right? We don't hear witnesses, we don't take, the attorney doesn't present the application or anything like that. One alternative that we could take in this scenario is to move the item to public hearing. And it would then have an opportunity for the attorney applicant to make their presentation. We would go to public comment. There would be an opportunity for rebuttal. We close the public hearing, and then we'd come back and we decide, decide the matter. But that is always within our discretion to do so. I think, and there have been instances where we've exercised that, like, for example, where there was a coastal site plan application, to my memory, not too long ago, where it came in as a compliance, but we actually had a few questions that we wanted to ask the applicant about, the plan and some of the comments and things, and we moved it to public hearing. And so, and I thought that was a good exercise of that discretion. Here, not so much. I mean, I think Mr. Wendt is on the money on this one. We're being asked administratively to approve a 5-year extension as of right on an application that we approved within the period, and there's nothing in our record which, to my mind, would indicate that we would be approving an extension on anything other than that, other than this inquiry, which I think I've vetted. It's sufficiently. But if others feel differently, then please jump in. Does that answer your question?
You're on mute, Attorney Brayman.
Yep. And now you're frozen. with apologies, you're.
Pardon me.
Now you're a circle. No worries. Did you maybe try turning off your video to save a little bandwidth, and then restart? Well, I think we might have just lost him, which is unfortunate. Yeah, I got an explanation.
Meanwhile, could I ask one question, make a comment?
Commissioner Francis, while we wait for Commissioner Brayman, please.
Just a comment. We had an email from a man who lives in Greenfield Hunt behind this, and I don't remember his name. We read so many emails, but I would appreciate it if staff would call him. He couldn't follow, I think it was the decision out of inland wetlands, and he just seemed a little confused by the process. And I wondered if you would call him when you have a chance, or let him know the last step that he couldn't figure out on Earth in our red tape.
We can certainly do that.
Thank you.
It appears, I think that's Gordon McKenzie.
Yes, that.
Yeah. No, and that's So we're adding people and losing people at a rapid rate here, Ms. Harris. You know, for as many meetings as we've had since this whole thing has transpired, we haven't had that many technical issues with people participating. It's been pretty successful. It's been very successful.
Don't jinx us, please.
But I am a bit curious about Commissioner Brayman, though. I mean, we were right in the middle of. There he is. He's back. Oh, I see him
I
in two.
apologize for the difficulties. Hopefully I don't cut out again. I just wanted to
Hey.
confirm that there is an application as of right, and so be it. But I wanted to Mr. Wentz.
No. Yeah, you're unfortunately you are now lost again.
If I can try to understand, I believe his question is whether this extension request is an as of right approval. The purpose really of an extension request is, there is a time limit to the site plan. The special permit does not expire under the statute, but the site plan can. And the reason behind a site plan is if there are material changes to our regulations or circumstances that have happened in the intervening period that might change the site plan if it were to expire, is really the purpose behind that. There have not been any material changes to our regulations in this intervening time that would have any impact on this particular site plan. So it's yes and no. It's not as of right. It is discretionary on the commission's part, but the reason being is to measure whether or not there's been any material changes in the regulations that would warrant a different outcome should the application be made today.
I mean, I think phrased another way, it is that it is as of right, unless there is some reason that would have altered the regulations applicable to the parcel. We had that situation in Westway, but no, I mean, I think that's right. So, Commissioner Brayman, does that satisfy your questions? Yeah, thumbs up. All right, good. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Raise your hand. Yes, Commissioner Braun. You're on mute. There you go.
So the two letters, by the way, I just have to disclose I'm a member of Fair Plan, which also wrote a letter. I was unaware they were writing a letter and didn't even know about this until I got it in the, along with the email with everything else. But there's two letters. They both seem to indicate that conservation has not ratified whatever the litigation was. So we don't really know what conservation has done. I would like to know if they approved changes to their site plan, and if they have, how does that affect us? Because one of the letters indicated that there will be a change from a medical professional building to a 90-unit 8-30G. I would like to have more information on that, especially from conservation. I don't know the status. I don't have any paperwork in front of me from conservation.
No, we don't. And I mean, I think that's the point, right? Is that we don't have anything in front of us from conservation because that's not before us. We approved an application previously, and the applicant has now come before us with a request to extend the time within which they may build the project. And the idea that they're maybe pursuing some other application in another agency with respect to a modification of the plan, is really, it's of no moment.
What happens? So if we allow the 5-year extension,
Mm-hmm.
and they come back with any change whatsoever, what does that mean?
Well, they
Why do they need an extension if they're not changing? I guess they need an extension if
built the property. They haven't built the development.
Okay, so if they want to change it,
No,
if the extension helps them,
they're not asking us to change it.
no, but if they come back in 6 months and say, well, we changed our mind, now we're doing a 90 unit 8-30G, does it help them that we gave them this extension? Does it make any legal difference at all?
No, that's a new application. That's an entirely new application. This is what with the site plan that we approved for this 4085 was a medical building, and they want 5 more years in order to build a medical building. Now, if they abandon that plan, that's the applicant's prerogative, and they can pursue a different proposal under something else. If we deny this, I think there needs to be some basis for denial, and I don't know what that would be at this point. I mean, there's not a different plan in front of us. If there was, maybe we would have a public hearing to determine whether the changes were substantial. But as Mr. Wendt has explained to us, that is not the case here. This is the site plan as we had approved, which is coming up for expiration, for which they're seeking a 5-year extension of time. Anybody else? Okay. I think that's it. Give them one more. Okay. So the motion on the table is to approve this extension. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the application for extension is approved unanimously. So and Mr. Wendt, if you could just please make a note that it was an approval of the site plan that was previously, the extension is for the site plan that was previously approved by us without modification.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, did you get my message that Mr. Barnhart is now available?
Oh, no, thanks.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You know, this little chat thing, there's just a little red light. They don't give you notifications like everything else. Mr. Barnhart, welcome.
Good.
I'll call.
I'm glad you can hear me.
Yes. So before you begin, we just concluded with the next. So I'll call 350 Quincy Street referral regarding the town acquisition of property, and call Mr. Barnhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My apologies. I did try to log on through the WebEx link, but apparently I have a poor Wi-Fi signal, so I tried the old-fashioned route via telephone. So this is the town is proposing to exercise its option to repurchase 350 Quincy Street, which is part of the Parkview Commons development. Funds for the purchase would come from the Housing Trust Fund. The intent here is to work with to acquire this property and then work with abutting property owners in the same development to aggregate parcels as part of a larger multi-phase redevelopment plan that would enable us to address flood issues and raise or elevate these structures above the flood elevation. We would intend to do this by demolishing the existing units and constructing new ones at the correct elevation. If we're not able to do that to develop an acceptable plan within a reasonable time frame, we would then simply resell the existing unit with the resale and other restrictive covenants in place to another income eligible home buyer. The overall redevelopment plan is not before you this evening. It's really the purchase of the property, which is subject to an 824 review. This action is also pending the approval of the Board of Selectmen and RTM. It was presented to the Affordable Housing Committee at its meeting of September 9th, and the Affordable Housing Committee unanimously approved both the proposed purchase as well as the utilization of Housing Trust monies, trust fund monies for that purpose. The goal here is really to preserve these affordable homeownership units, as well as to look for opportunities to add additional affordable units if feasible. Any sales proceeds from either the resale or redevelopment would then be deposited back into the Housing Trust Fund. Happy to answer any questions the Commission may have at this time.
Thank you. So what I think the Affordable Housing Committee is seeking then is a positive recommendation of the TPZ to RTM and the Board of Selectmen to vote favorably upon this?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good. I think I have a couple questions, but can we get a motion on the table?
Move to approve.
Commissioner Brayman moves to approve, and
Second.
Commissioner Levy second. Thank you. Commissioner Brayman and then Commissioner Levy. Thank you very much. Commissioner Brayman, you want to start?
Yeah, so I reviewed the letter from Mr. Barnhart and listened to his presentation. I've reviewed the appraisal materials. And I appreciate the limitations that Mr. Barnhart stated on our review under General Statute 8-24. We're being asked to approve in our role as TPZ the purchase of this unit with the purpose that Mr. Barnhart stated. Serves the laudable goal of laudable goals of trying to preserve and perpetuate affordable housing in the town, and also to increase flood resiliency. And I move its approval.
You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
I made the error. Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, I concur with what my fellow Commissioner Brayman has just indicated. One question for Mr. Barnhart. Is it contemplated that other parcels will be purchased and sort of aggregated together to allow for a larger development, or is it contemplated that they would still continue as sort of single-family residences on each parcel?
More the former, Mr. Commissioner. It would be to work with the willing homeowners to also acquire additional interest in those properties, aggregate the parcels, and look for opportunities to do a larger scale redevelopment as part of this.
Very good. Thank you.
Is the Housing Trust Fund money, is that the money that's been deposited over the time from the applications that we set up, or is that are those?
Yes, sir.
It is. Excellent.
Yes, it is.
What have we accrued in that account?
To date, we have a balance of roughly $800,000.
Excellent. And is this going to be the first major use of funds from that? Go ahead.
It is, yes.
Very good.
Just one question to follow up on the previous two questions. Is there any sort of master plan for how to prioritize the purchase of additional units in the development?
We will look to work with the abutting property owners. We've had conversations with several of them to date, and so that would make sense to look at contiguous parcels that could be aggregated into a first phase of a redevelopment plan. And then we would move into subsequent phases to include other lots as they became available.
Okay. Yeah. Commissioner Levy.
Yes. One further question. Do the existing restrictions on the property, the affordable restrictions, would they preclude any development with mixed economic, development, or would it all have to be, or would all new units have to be affordable?
It wouldn't necessarily preclude it, but we would look to make some revisions to the overall development plan, and that would be part of a subsequent application.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Braun. You're on mute. I'm sorry. You're on mute.
How do I? Okay. Just reading what's on the last page, it looks like the plan is to replace the existing houses with duplexes, not a massive building. Can you just clarify that? And also, I had a question about the current owner is a private individual because they want to lease the property post-closing for up to 15 months to enable her relocation out of state. Do you know anything about that, or is there any legal issue? It looks like the town has agreed to do it, so I assume the town attorney is okay with whatever the liability aspect of that is.
Thank you, Commissioner. When we first acquired the property, we had holdover tenants with the U.S. military, so this is a very similar situation here where the owner had asked for some additional time to firm up her affairs, close up her affairs here locally, and then relocate out of state. It's a little bit longer than we would have liked, but it doesn't preclude our overall development plans for the site. It'll take us some time to put those plans into motion, so we didn't see an issue with that in granting her request to facilitate the acquisition. Yes, the development plan that we have discussed with the abutting homeowners or the homeowners there, this has been over several years we've had these conversations, is for an appropriately scaled development. We've looked at duplex style, similar to what is currently in the neighborhood.
Will we be gaining any affordable housing credits by this, or is it more or less replacing what's there already?
As was noted before, the initial goal is to preserve what we have and to certainly elevate the structures so that they're above the flood elevation in that area.
Okay.
A secondary goal, should we have the opportunity to do that, would be to add additional affordable units. But I do envision that this will be a mixed income development at some point.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Commissioner Francis?
Some of the homes in the neighborhood have already been raised, and some of them are duplex. Is that right?
The only ones within this development that are duplexes are the 4 lots at the end, which were built new subsequent to transfer by Operation Hope. And so that is something we're looking to, right. It's part of the same overall development, but those are rental units operated by Operation Hope, not home ownership units. But we would be looking to do something similar.
That's the look you're going for. It's very attractive. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay. So the motion on the table is to recommend to the RTM and the Board of Selectmen to vote favorably on the Affordable Housing Committee's request to acquire this property. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hands? Anyone? Abstentions? Yeah, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Barnhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission.
Okay. Next on our agenda is 23 Sherman Street. It's a request of Michael Fazio for 100% of a $29,435 bond pertaining to special permit improvements in the Center Design District.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Went, for the record, on July 12th of 2016, the commission approved a special permit for the construction of a 3-story mixed-use building that is retail on the first floor, office on the second floor, and 2 apartments on the third floor. All bonded improvements have been completed to our satisfaction. You have an email in your file along with a the tax assessor's photo of the building, and the engineering department concurs and is recommending 100% bond release.
Yeah. Thank you. I have a motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Move
Tommy
to
Noonan, move to approve.
Thank you. Motion to approve by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner Francis. Thank you. Building actually looks very nice, both in the photo as well as in real life. Anyone have any other comments or questions?
The lamppost in the parking lot has been down for several months. Somebody must have hit it, but it has been down all summer. So hopefully they're going to reinstall that.
Oh, interesting.
But
Okay.
I agree with you. It's a very attractive building. Very nice.
That's important to bring to bear.
Just as a note, this was hung up because it did get knocked down last winter. That's actually been capped and removed. They don't believe that they need it. There's enough light in the parking lot and ambient light. So that light pole has been capped off. So I don't anticipate that that's going to be replaced on the site.
Okay. Are they going to remove it? I mean, it's lying there.
As far as I know, that's been removed.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the bond is released unanimously. Next is 1571 Stratfield Road, request of Sunrise Senior Living for 100% release of a $87,020 bond pertaining to special exception improvements in the R3 zone.
Mr. Chairman, again, Jim Went for the record. In May of this year, this matter came up for a bond release, and while the engineering department had recommended at that time that they were recommending release, the commission took issue with the LED rope lighting that's on, I believe it was Commissioner Corcoran in particular, brought that to our attention, that there was LED rope lighting around the lower level in the portico. We notified Sunrise that strip lighting is not permitted. They are now indicating by letter that that lighting is on a separate breaker from the other lighting, and they have the ability to turn it off, which they say they have done. They are requesting that the lighting remain rather than be removed, and indicate that they would only be illuminated during the holiday period between Thanksgiving and New Year, use it as holiday lighting. So rather than completely remove the lighting that they've installed, they've agreed not to have it illuminated except during the holiday time. That was the only hang up to the original request for bond release.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Can I have a motion on that one? I think it would likely be some combination of a release with a condition. Commissioner Noonan?
Tommy Noonan, move to approve with the condition essentially as stated by Mr. Wentz, that lighting would only be done during between Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday season.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Second by Commissioner Francis. Anybody have any comments? Commissioner Corcoran? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm fine with this.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The bond release with conditions as stated is approved unanimously. We're all agreeing tonight. Good. Next item on the agenda is new applications to recommend a public hearing. First is zoning regulation amendment, application of the Affordable Housing Committee to amend Section 6 accessory apartments.
Mr. Chairman, this is just this is a regulation amendment. The purpose of this is to revisit some of the provisions of our accessory apartment regulations that potentially could be a barrier for folks establishing new accessory apartments. They have a detailed proposal outlined that is in referral now to the various agencies, and it does require a public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing is required. May I have a motion, please? Motion to approve by Commissioner Brayman, second by Commissioner Braun. Any questions of Mr. Wendt? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Raise your hand. Any abstentions? Move to public hearing unanimously. Next item is 1391 Black Rock Turnpike, re-subdivision application of Lucas Papa George for 2 lots in a B zone.
Mr. Chairman, this property is at the corner of Black Rock Turnpike and Borowski Drive. As it is a re-subdivision application, a division of property into 2 lots, it does require a public hearing.
Motion. Commissioner Noonan, so moved.
So moved.
Second. Commissioner Corcoran, thank you. All right, it's a re-subdivision is required. Anybody have any comments, questions for Mr. Wendt? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the items move to public hearing unanimously. Next item is old business, 528 Black Rock Turnpike, a zoning compliance application of Alfonso Tamarado Jr. for a 23-unit residential building pursuant to Section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes in a Residence C zone. Mr. Wendt. And if we're talking, let's all try to mute, okay?
All right, Mr. Chairman, this subject property is a 0.27 acre lot located at the intersection of Black Rock Turnpike and Castle Avenue in a Residence C zone. A previously existing dwelling on the site has been demolished. The proposal entails a 23-unit residential building on 3 floors above grade level parking and lobby. The proposal is submitted under Section 8-30G of the Connecticut General Statutes and proposes that 30% of the units, a total of 7 of the units, are to be deed restricted as below market rate units. 4 units at 60% area median income and 3 units at 80% area median income. Of the 23 units, 22 are 1-bedroom units, and there is 1 2-bedroom unit proposed. There are a total of 26 parking spaces proposed. During the course of the hearing, the site plan was modified to provide for 2 driveways, one with an ingress from either direction on Castle Avenue, and the other for a right-hand turn egress drive only. As this commission is aware, the standards for review of an affordable housing application differ from a typical zoning application. For a denial of an affordable housing application to be sustained, the burden is on the commission to prove, based on evidence in the record compiled before the commission, that the decision from which the appeal is taken and the reasons cited for such decision are supported by sufficient evidence in the record. The commission shall also have the burden to prove that A, the decision is necessary to protect substantial public health and public interest in health, safety, or other matters for which the commission has jurisdiction. B, such public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing. And C, such public interests cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. Court cases have indicated, and this is, you've heard this before, the record must establish more than a mere possibility of harm to a substantial public interest. The record must contain evidence as to a quantifiable probability that a specific harm will result if the application is granted. Mere concerns alone do not amount to sufficient evidence to support the denial of an affordable housing application. The majority of the discussion during the hearing on this matter centered on issues of traffic and parking. The traffic report indicates that to achieve a sight line for vehicles exiting the site, parking needs to be restricted along Castle Avenue. Such a restriction would result in the loss of 3 on-street parking spaces. To offset this loss, the applicant has agreed to allow for 3 on-site spaces to be used by the public, thus resulting in 23 available spaces for the 23 units and 3 publicly available spaces. Restricting the parking on Castle Avenue, however, would require the review and approval of the police commission. In the absence of the parking restriction, a proper sight line cannot be achieved. The applicant has agreed, therefore, that the commission can condition the approval on the police commission, the subsequent approval of the police commission for that parking restriction. The traffic report further recommends considering shifting the double yellow line center line on Castle Avenue for at least the first block to provide for an 8-foot parking lane on the southerly side of the street, since parking would be restricted on the northerly side, and allowing for two 11-foot travel lanes. It's a 30-foot paved surface. So to shift that line would provide for an 8-foot parking aisle on the south side and then two 11-foot travel lanes. There was concern raised regarding trash service to the building and whether there's adequate maneuvering space for a vehicle to service the site. After much discussion, the applicant agreed to a potential condition of approval that the trash would be serviced by a vehicle no larger than a pickup truck so that off-site maneuvering issues would be eliminated. The intersection of Castle Avenue with Black Rock Turnpike is proposed to be improved by moving the stop sign and stop bar closer to the intersection and providing a new crosswalk. Concerns were raised, however, as to whether the proposed site improvements themselves would present an impediment to the sight line to the right at that intersection. Post-hearing review with the engineering department reveals that the proposed retaining wall that's shown on the architectural plan with a top of wall elevation of 28 would impact the sight line, particularly since this section of the wall is shown to have a 48-inch fence on top. This potentially could be remedied by either lowering the wall such that the fence is not required, or shortening its length of the wall so it's not projected into the sight line. That should be considered potentially as a modification to the plan. Similar consideration should be given to the proposed generator location, which is also near that corner. There's no height indicated for that generator, so it's our recommendation that the generator location either be relocated out of that sight line or eliminated completely. That is all I have at this point, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, you're muted, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. I appreciate that summary very much. Could you also describe for us the procedural posture of the application? I mean, I know that at one point, we could, but then we closed. And how much time do we have to decide this application?
The hearing is closed, and the applicant has agreed to an extension that would carry your decision period to the 16th of October.
And when is our next meeting?
Our next meeting scheduled is 2 weeks from tonight.
All right, so it'd be still within September.
Yeah, there are two meetings on the calendar prior to that expiration date, the 29th of this month and the 13th of October.
Gotcha. Okay, two. So we have plenty of time. Yeah. Okay. Very good. So throw it open. I mean, we can. There's a lot of moving parts with this application. As Mr. Nguyen summarized, I mean, I'm happy to have a motion and start talking about it tonight. But as Mr. Nguyen described, we have plenty of time. We have 2 more meetings before the statutory period expires for us to decide the application. So if commissioners felt like we needed a little bit more time to study this and dig into some of the things that we have to deal with here, we could move it over to we could table it at least for a meeting. So I'll throw it open for.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tommy Noonan. I would move to table. Give us an extra 2 weeks.
The table by Commissioner Noonan, second by Commissioner Braun. All right, Commissioner Noonan, you have any more you'd like to add to that?
I do not. If the majority want to push forward, I'm happy to discuss it more. But I asked for the extra 2 weeks.
Okay. Commissioner Braun, any more to add? Yep. Levy, I see you. I also saw Commissioner Brayman as well. I have some comments.
We can't hear you, Kathy.
Commissioner Braun, you're muted. You keep pressing it again. There you go.
I
doesn't
support
we
the
can
motion.
talk about it. By moving on, well, before you started, I just want to make clear that, with this motion to table doesn't mean that we can't start discussing some of these issues and so forth. We can still do that in the context of our executive session, and also, have more time. But I just make that point. Commissioner,
I would like more time also to study, especially since conditions are being requested for which we have no plans presented as to how they would work or if they would work. So I think the extra sheets would be useful, just more study and depth, everything that took place, all the material we have.
yeah, no, that's. I mean, it's well taken, right? I mean, I was trying to put together all the things that we need to really talk about and put in the context of a decision here. One of the ways to deal with this is to, look, if there are issues in the application under 830G, we are required to consider, reasonable alternatives to situations that, are problematic and see if that would work. And, we don't have revised site plans for a new fence and a wall and all that kind of stuff. But, one of the things that we could do if we do table this and, when we ultimately decide it, one of the things that we can do that is to outline the various issues, safety issues that we see as are problematic, and require that the applicant make changes if they can and come back to us with a revised site plan for our further approval. So we don't have to sit down with a ruler and such and try to figure it out. But we could identify the issue and condition the approval on the applicant being able to demonstrate that they can overcome, the problem by amending the site plan. Commissioner Levy, you were next. Sorry.
Along those same lines, I guess my question is, can we reopen the public hearing for purposes of them submitting a revised plan addressing the sightline concerns and the generator?
No, Mr. Wendt, I don't think so, but please.
Yeah, Jim Wendt for the record. I don't believe we can, Mr. Levy. At this point, the hearing is closed, so we can't get any new information from the applicant nor the public at this point. I think the question really becomes whether the issue at hand is one that rises to the level of, or whether it falls in the category of I'm going back to my summary. Letter C in the criteria for the commission that if a public health and safety issue is identified, item C is can reasonable changes to the plan be made to address that concern. So I think you as the chair recommended, I don't believe we can have them submit a plan at this point, other than you requiring that if you were to move forward with a condition, that the condition would be that they would have to subsequently submit a plan that addresses that sightline issue to your satisfaction as a subsequent action. And if they can, then they would meet that condition. If they cannot, then they would have failed to meet that condition, and therefore the application would not move forward.
And I think that is in the same vein, with the police commission. If, we go through all of this process and they get to the police commission and the police commission, decides that it's not appropriate to remove those parking spaces, then, they won't be able to have sight lines and they won't be able to build a development. I think we articulated that at the public hearing. Commissioner Levy, any more?
No.
Okay.
Thanks.
Commissioner Brayman? You're on mute. I thought I saw you raise your hand. Yes? No?
No comment.
No comment. Very good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Noonan.
I suspect most people are going to have issues with the wall, the new suggestion of a wall. In the meantime of this 2-week period, is it worth asking, or is it possible to ask for a revision of the sightline, revision of the site plan to address this new concern? So when we're coming back 2 weeks from now, we actually have something more concrete to look upon. And that may take a decision. If that needs an amendment of the motion, so be it. But especially because this is the new, been brought new to us. Maybe it's worth doing two things at once, so to speak.
Yeah, so I think that's what we just talked about. And as Mr. Wendt described, the public hearing is closed, so we can't get any new evidence from the applicant or the public. And the way that we would articulate this is to make it a condition of approval that, you know, we find that there are inadequate sightlines. I mean, as presented to us today, the proposal has inadequate sightlines that would result in an unsafe condition such that we couldn't approve this, right? I mean, sightlines is sort of one of those flashpoints, right? Either you have them or you don't. And if you've got them, it's safe. And if you don't, it's not. And it is likely to lead to, you know, people getting, you know, accidents, injuries, you know, and the like. So we, as Mr. Wendt described, we do perceive, engineering does perceive of a way that it could be remedied, but we don't know that for sure because we are not the applicant or their engineers, and we're not sitting down with the site plan and trying to, you know, do the angles and make the calculations and everything. And I think that it would be thus a condition of approval that they would rectify or seek to rectify in a revised or amended plan. This, among others. I mean, I think that there are, you know, there are a number of others. The generator, the police approval of parking and such that, you know, as conditions of approval, and they would have to come back with a revised site plan to show that they could overcome those things. That would be to our satisfaction. Commissioner Brayman.
Did we get an email from the town engineering department about the sightline issues, particularly the fence and the generator?
Yes, yes, we can. We can. It was a discussion that we've had internally. I'm sure we could get a backup email to support that finding.
Yeah, now I think that would be important, frankly, to document the file. And thank you, Commissioner Brayman, for asking for that. We are, even though the public hearing is closed, we remain at liberty to engage with our town offices and experts on the application to, you know, ask these questions and the like, just like we can go in and sit with Mr. Wendt and staff to talk about this. But I think this has been productive, you know, getting this all out, you know, a little bit, and also now getting the additional evidence in the record from the town engineer about the sight lines. Mr. Wendt, why don't you ask them to also comment with respect to the generator?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Lee.
Yes, thank you. Perhaps staff could request that the town engineer specifically address whether or not the existing plan does present, the sightline issue does present a problem in terms of potential safety or accident. And equally, if they could outline so that we would have information from an engineering staff, possible terms or conditions or the actual mechanics of how they might be remedied, so that we could have a specific condition based upon our administrative review.
I do that.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Any other comments for discussion on this? No? Okay. Seeing none. The motion on the table is to table the item. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the item is tabled unanimously. The next item. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is compliance applications. 983 Reef Road, local site plan application of Florinda Trofa pertaining to the construction of a new two-family dwelling in the B zone.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Jim Went again for the record. This site is on the easterly side of Reef Road and a Residence B zone. A previously existing two-family dwelling has recently been demolished. The applicant is proposing to construct a new FEMA-compliant two-family dwelling in its place. All coastal resource policies have been addressed, and the Connecticut DEEP has no concerns for this proposal. The applicant is indicating a proposed 10-foot wide maintenance easement in favor of the town to access the tidal creek that abuts this property on the east side, and there's an adjacent head wall that goes under Reef Road. So as we recommend a condition, should you see to approve this application, is to finalize that easement and get it recorded on the land records as a condition of approval. Other than that, we believe it to be compliant with the B zone requirements and consistent with all coastal management policies.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion on this? Motion to approve by Commissioner Levy.
I'd move to approve with the condition that the maintenance easement be part of the conditions of approval.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Levy. May I have a second on that?
Commissioner Noonan, I second.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Levy, anything more to add?
No, I don't.
Okay. Commissioner Noonan?
Nothing more to add.
Okay. Anyone else? And this does seem fairly straightforward. No one? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. The compliance is approved unanimously. Next is 1505 Fairfield Beach Road, coastal site plan application of Tom Mason pertaining to the construction of a single-family dwelling in the Beach District.
Again, Jim Went for the record. This proposal seeks to construct an elevated FEMA-compliant single-family dwelling in place of an existing dwelling on the site. This is in the Beach District on the beach side of Fairfield Beach Road. All coastal resource policies have been addressed, and the Connecticut DEEP has also opined that they have no concerns for this proposal. This plan is compliant with all the Beach District criteria and is consistent with coastal resource policies. Parenthetically, I just wanted to note on this plan, we've had some discussion on past applications about the application of the setback rule, where if vacant before the adoption of the Beach District regulations, the setback from the sound is drawn between the adjacent structures. And if an existing structure, you're bound by the line of the existing structure, whether it's forward or waterward or landward of the line between adjacent structures. This is an example of where that application is more restrictive, and that this house is landward of the line drawn between the two adjacent structures, and they're bound by that line. So we've had some history on that, but other than that, it's a fairly straightforward application, and we recommend its approval.
Okay. Thank you. Can I have a motion? Commissioner Noonan, move to approve? Yes. Second by Commissioner Levy?
Yes.
Thank you. Either of you have any more to add?
Nothing more to add.
Nothing further.
Again, this seems to be a straightforward application. Any other commissioners need to have any questions or comments on this? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The compliance application is approved unanimously. Next is 1899 Bronson Road, compliance application of William King, retail office art studio use in an existing building in the neighborhood design district.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, again, Jim Went for the record. This site is on the westerly side of Bronson Road in the neighborhood design business district. The building on this property was occupied for a bank for many years and most recently by an art gallery. The applicant seeks a combination of uses for the existing building, including a retail use consisting of the sale of native plants, a professional office of a landscape architect, and a small performing arts studio, all permitted uses in the district. The building is approximately 1,800 square feet in size. If the strictest parking standard were applied, that for retail of 1 per 200 square feet for the entirety of the building, it would require 9 parking spaces. There are 13 existing parking spaces on this site. And you do have a plan in the packet that shows how the site is going to be utilized with some limited area for, outside display and growth of some plants. But other than that, it's a repurposing of a use it's been vacant for quite a while in the bottom of that, in that Greenfield Hill neighborhood district. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All of these are permitted uses in the neighborhood design district.
That is my opinion. Yes, sir.
Very good.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Francis and second by Commissioner Noonan. Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Francis, any comments?
I think this will be a strong use and a great addition to the Greenfield Hill Shopping Center. It's a good use of the property. Good to get it back on the tax rolls again.
Very good. Anyone else? Commissioner Noonan? No? Very good. I agree. I also agree that these are permitted uses in the neighborhood design district, and there's no reason why this should not be approved. Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the compliance application is approved unanimously. Next item is our public hearing, 131 Beach Road. Zoning compliance application of 131 Beach Road LLC pertaining to the construction 40-unit residential building pursuant to Section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes in the A zone. This is continued from July 14, 2020. I believe at that time, the applicant was not quite finished with their presentation. I believe we were up to their final expert, Mr. Galante, with a review of his traffic and parking analysis. After which the applicant will finish their presentation and whatever else they want to do. We'll then move to public hearing. And at that time, I will take up this most recent letter that Attorney Green has filed with a subsequent request for a continuation of the hearing. But I want to get through what we need to with the applicant before we turn our attention to that. We'll deal with that when we get there. Okay. With that, we can turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Town Planner Wendt, Assistant Town Planner Harrigan, members of the public. For the record, my name is Chris Smith. I am a land use attorney with the law firm of Alter and Pearson, and I appear before you this evening representing the owner applicant 131 Beach Road, LLC, concerning this proposed 40-unit multi-family residential community development with a housing opportunity component as provided by Section 8-30G of the Connecticut General Statutes. As the chairman indicated, we did get through most of our presentation at the first evening of public hearing on July 14, 2020, but we came up just short. Mike Galante, our traffic expert, had just started. He gave you a very quick summary about what we'd like to do with the permission of the chair and the commission is have Mr. Galante go back, revisit his presentation for the commission, after which we do have a presentation, very brief, by Joseph Versteeg, our fire safety expert. We were asked to generate a couple of exhibits, two graphics, one concerning the zoning for the area and which properties would qualify relative to the zone text amendment that has been submitted as part of this two-part application. We did submit that, and I can provide you with an overview of it if you'd like. We also did submit a view shed analysis with some various photographs and some other documentation, again, that I can just cover very briefly after we hear from Mr. Galante and Mr. Versteeg. So with permission of the chair, if I can turn the floor over to Mr. Galante, we'll provide you with his traffic report. Thank you.
Please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mike Galante from Hardesty in Hanover. And it's actually nice to be first instead of last at the public hearing. But before I get started, Emmeline, can I declare the figures from our, here we go.
I think this is,
Just scroll
let
through
me just double check. I think this is the first one.
Keep going.
You want me to start with this one, Mike?
Yeah, we can start with that one.
Okay.
The figures that you have in front of you and the tables are from the traffic report, which was dated April of this year, 2020. I'm not sure how much I covered that night. I know it covered a lot in a short amount of time, but I'd like to just go over it again tonight, a little slower and in some detail, and certainly answer any questions you may have, whether it's now or later or later. But this figure is a figure from the report that simply shows the study area. It gives you the reference of the site. Beach Road is between Post Road, of course, which is Route 1 on the left side, and Old Post Road, which is on the right side. Beach Road is a town road, and the two red dots that you see on this figure are the locations, the intersections that were included in the actual traffic counting program and the analyses. And of course, in the future condition, we analyzed the proposed driveway. Emily, you can go to the next one. Perfect. This is figure 2 from the same traffic report. This is simply a map we put in all of our reports, which is simply the inventory of the conditions, roadway conditions in the study area. In this case, we of course focused on Beach Road between Post and Old Post Road. Beach Road is a town road, as I mentioned. It's a 40-foot wide pavement. It has curbs and sidewalks along both sides. That's what the blue lines stand for, as far as sidewalks. And you may not be able to see it too clearly, but all those circles with letters in the parking signs, in each case, a no parking sign with an arrow or no parking here to corner or whatever it might say. And that chart on the bottom left gives you an indication. Of course, there are a couple signs in there that show the posted speed limit. The 25 is Beach Road. It's important in this figure, just for better understanding of existing conditions on Beach Road itself, there are actually 13 driveways along this one block stretch between Post and Old Post Road. One driveway, which is adjacent to our site on the right side, is to a garage for a residential unit that fronts on Old Post Road. But all the other driveways are either for a church, 2 office buildings, which are medical buildings, gas station, the large building on the top, which is the People's Bank and the Advanced Radiology and other companies in there. The Irish Club, the funeral home across the street from us, and of course our site, which has currently 2 driveways. In our plan, we will eliminate the northerly driveway, the driveway closest to Post Road, and maintain and improve the what I'll call the southerly driveway, which is closest to Old Post Road itself. Further study of these no parking areas near driveways, if you're near the Post Road intersection, the reason for no parking is really because the lane arrangement on Beach is a 3-lane cross section. It's closest to the intersection of Post Road. It has driveways with the gas station, and it simply makes sense not to have any parking. As you travel down Beach Road towards the middle of the road itself, towards our site, you'll have the medical building that's behind the gas station, if you will. There's no parking for a very short distance in front of that building on the approach to their driveway, maybe 2 car lengths. In front of the funeral home, there's no parking, and I would assume it's no parking for a day of a funeral when they need, to line up cars in front of the building itself. Across from there, you have 111 Beach Road, which is an office building. I believe there's some medical in there. There's no parking for about 2 car lengths for their northerly driveway. My point with this is the town, in its review of applications over a period of time, obviously not in the last year or so, but over a period of time, made decisions on the assessment of sight lines for driveways. And in each case, the town made a decision, and the wording is really to provide an appropriate, adequate, and a safe condition for a driveway. The town doesn't really have any specific guidelines, simply to say, but it says you should provide safe and adequate sight distances. So that decision was made for each driveway. And my only point is none of them follow what we're following today, which is the Connecticut DOT standards, which in some respects are guidelines, and we follow them, and we do provide that. But it just shows a clear, if you took parking off of Beach Road and there's not much parking there, you would have no parking along both sides of Beach Road. That's my only point. Moving forward, if you can, Emmeline. We conducted actual traffic counts back in January. That's before the pandemic. So these volumes are, I'll call them good volumes. Schools were open, no snow this past winter, as we all know. It represented actual and appropriate conditions for the basis of a traffic study. We conducted these turn moving counts at both intersections during the week, morning and afternoon. And from that, we identified the peak hours. The morning was 8:30 to 9:30, and the afternoon was 4:30 to 5:30. These were the highest volumes recorded at this intersection. And we counted, obviously, from 7 to 9 in the morning, so it's a longer period than just the peak, and 4 to 7 p.m. at night at both intersections. These just simply show the volumes by turn movement. And these are the basis for our traffic counts and our analyses as we move forward. Emmeline, you can go a little bit forward. This table 1 is in the traffic report, and it just simply summarizes the volumes. These are two-way volumes. Post Road, of course, is the busiest, and the weekday afternoon is the highest volume, about 2,200 vehicles on Post Road, which is Route 1. Just simply going down this chart, Beach Road has 800 vehicles in the morning, two-way volume, and about 665 vehicles in the afternoon. These are 1-hour volumes. Old Post Road, as you go further down, has a higher volume at 840 during the morning peak and 890 during the afternoon peak, and so on as we go down the chart itself. This just gives you a range of the volume of traffic we have on roads today. This is before we add any traffic for our development itself. We took these volumes, we expanded them to a 2021 what we call no build condition. We applied a growth rate of 0.6% per year, which is from CONDOT. They give you the growth rate for each town as we go through each of these projects in any town throughout the state. We contact CONDOT for that information. We also contact the planning department here in town to see if there are any other major developments that should be added into the background condition as we move the process of these two intersections to a future build condition, which includes site traffic itself. Emmeline. Accident data. We obtain accident data from 2 sources, from Connecticut DOT for Route 1, which is Post Road. We collected generally from 2016 through 2019, a 3-year period. I believe it was actually from July 1 to June 30th. That's why we have the 2-year lines in there. And if we just focus on the Beach Road between Old Post and Post Road itself, there were a total of 5 accidents during that 3-year period. And if you further break down that information, and I'll summarize it for you. It's in the report, but we've summarized it a little bit more. One accident was actually related to someone hitting a deer, and that occurred near the address 249 Beach Road itself. At 52, which is the medical building behind the gas station, if you will, and next to the funeral home, that brick building, there were a total of 2 angled accidents at their driveway. And the Irish Club, which is next to that, with their driveway, there was 1 angled accident. So there were 3 accidents at that driveway or driveways during a 3-year period. Now that doesn't, in my mind, identify an unsafe condition, but it's something we certainly look at. If you look at our existing driveways for our site, 2 driveways, there were no accidents during this period. And it's interesting, our driveway today doesn't really have, and I'll touch on sight lines at this point. I was going to do it later. But one of the commissioners, not sure who it was last time, asked, well, what is the sight distance at our driveways today, at our side driveways? And if you look at the northerly driveway, which I'll say is the one closest to Post Road, If you look to the right, coming out of that driveway and looking south towards Old Post Road, there's a sight line of about 140 feet. I'm sorry, to the right, looking towards Post Road. Looking left, coming out of that, looking towards Old Post Road, is about 40 feet of sight distance. Keep in mind there's parking there. The southerly driveway, which is the driveway that will remain, has a sight line to the right of 65 feet and to the left about 70 feet. Again, there's parking nearby on the street itself. So those are the comparisons of existing conditions. I don't have the exact measurements for the funeral home or the medical building, but in each case they have parking that's been removed probably when the driveway was put or at some point after, where 1 or 2 spaces are prohibited from parking, and there are signs in place that say no parking with an arrow or whatever it might be. The church, for example, that's near our site has 1 parking space not permitted, if you will, on the side going towards Old Post Road. On the other side going towards Post Road, there's a driveway for the funeral home. So the comparison is with, I'll say, limited sight lines or sight lines that are not measured as far as the conduct process that we're going through, shows that these driveways do work. And can we classify them as safe? That's always a difficult word to use, but I can certainly say it's an adequate condition for all of these driveways, and none of them really have any criteria that matches the conduct standards that we're looking at, and we provide, and we can provide. So I just wanted to touch on that, and I'll go back to sight lines again a little bit later. I want to just kind of go through the traffic report, which eventually gets to sight lines again. Emmeline, if you can just keep on going. This development is a proposed 40-unit rental apartment building. And following trip generation rates that we kind of have to use, quite frankly, which is from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, better known as ITE. And this is something the town uses for different types of land use, and this is what CONDOT expects us to use, and we do use it. Indicates that 40 units during a peak hour in the morning will generate 15 trips. That's, of course, 4 trips going in, and people going to work, for example, in the morning, 11 trips exit, a total of 15. The afternoon is a little bit higher with 11 trips returning during the peak hour and 7 vehicles exiting the site for a total of 18. I show in this chart really for reference purposes on a daily basis, 24 hours, this type of development would generate about 218 trips. That, of course, is 109 in and 109 out. So these are the volumes we use to estimate and add traffic to the roadway system. And we do so by going to the next chart, which should be distribution and assignment. We develop these distribution patterns, based on our understanding and knowledge of the roads, where people want to go. In this case, we're assuming and estimating 85% will go to and from the Post Road, towards Round Hill Road, to go towards the Turnpike, for example, or the train station. Obviously, someday people will return to the trains to go to New York City, but not right now, sorry to say. And then 15% will go towards Post Road. If we add our site traffic to these percentages and a reference, and I'm sure this is of interest many people tonight, we add about 3 trips to the Old Post Road Beach Road intersection during both the morning and afternoon peak hours. The remaining traffic goes towards the Post Road intersection. So we add this traffic to the future node build traffic, which is a 2021 design year, if you will, which is based on the volumes obtained this past January, as I mentioned before, fortunately before the pandemic. And we project those volumes to a future condition at a growth rate based on standards provided by CONDOT. No other major developments nearby to add to this condition. And then we add this traffic to that no build, and we come up with what we call a build condition, and that's our future traffic volume. And if you can go to the next slide. This just simply shows the volumes from one of the peak hours. You can just go through this one to the next one. This is the tables that I show often, which is a summary of levels of service, vehicle delay, and so on, which is the criteria we use to analyze intersections and how these intersections operate before and after. And this is a summary of the table that's in the report, which is a little bit longer and more information. This shows the build conditions, and the last columns on the right simply show, do we change levels of service and what is the increase in delay due to the traffic from this proposed development. We don't change any levels of service by any movement or approach or overall. And our increase in delay, as you can see, is in the second, 1 second range or something below that. So This traffic added to the roadway system really has I hate to use the word, but we use it, insignificant impact on roads and operational characteristics of intersections. And from this information, we basically make the statement that we don't need to modify something such as the traffic signal timing at Post Road and Beach and Round Hill. At the intersection of Old Post Road and Beach, that's a four-way stop-way intersection. We all know it carries a higher volume during peak hours. I noted in my report and on one of the graphics that the Old Post Road really functions as a bypass or a way around Post Road through the center of town. Of course, Post Road functions as a bypass for I-95 during those busy times, certainly in the morning and probably more in the afternoon at the end of the day. So yes, there is traffic on Old Post Road. We acknowledge that. But we do also state that this development, while it does add traffic to the roadway system, there's no such thing as no impact, is a very small impact that doesn't require any modification. We did look at Old Post Road and Beach and I'm very familiar with the intersection. Can something be done to modify how that intersection operates to make it better flow on the Old Post Road? And quite frankly, it's best to leave it the way it is with not striping additional lanes on the approaches. There's plenty of pavement on Old Post Road. It's a very wide road. And I wouldn't recommend, for example, striping in a left turn lane or something like that. I think it works best. And yes, there are delays, but it's not from this development. It's from, I guess it's fair to say it's from I-95, and everyone that passes through town does get off 95 and they find their way around, sorry to say. But this table is really the table we have to show, which is what is the impact of this development on the roads, and this is what this table does. We also include our site driveway, which is one driveway in the future. We're doing AM and PM, of course, only for a build condition. And the intersection, the driveway would operate at level service A, which is really minimal delay. And I may go back to, if I didn't really mention it, but Old Post and Post operates at an overall level service E, which is traffic delays and congestion, which is what you see out there. And the Post Road and Beach Road, Round Hill operates in an overall level service C, which is acceptable levels. It's certainly a busy intersection, but it works quite well. And many of the intersections along Post Road work well with the traffic signal timing and coordination of the traffic signals through the center of town. It does move a fair amount of traffic, as you can see from the volumes from the counts itself.
Mr. Galante?
Yes, sir.
What does LTR, AP, and L mean in physical units?
L stands for left turn, T stands for through movement, and right stands for right turn. And for example, the first one says eastbound, which is EB. Then it says LTR. That's a one lane that accommodates a left movement, a through movement, and a right movement from one lane. The APT is the approach, and that's the results of the analysis for an approach. The letters are levels of service, and it was just like in school. A is everything is great. As you go down the scale, C is average. D is you're getting a little bit more congestion, and you get E in traffic, which is, it used to be called capacity. Now it's called simply more congestion, and F is more congestion on that. If you're in school, F, you're in trouble when you go home, and with traffic, it's just simply more delay. And we, if we can, we try to address it if we can. We don't just brush it aside, but we do look at that. This is our basis for determining potential impact to the roads. Does that answer your question? Kind of.
You're muted, Meg.
Good. Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
The APP was approach, the L was left. LTR was what?
The L is for a left turn movement, T is for a through movement, and R is for a right turn movement.
Okay, thank you.
And when they're together like that, it's a one lane. If you go down a little bit, you'll see just an L. That's on Post Road, that's a left turn lane only.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. Well, if you can go to the next graphic. Site distance. Originally, when we first started this project, we were doing site speed measurements a little different. We were basing it on standards that we were following from CONDOT, which was a sampling of 20 to 50 vehicles during off-peak times on a roadway itself. And that was a standard that we used for years, actually. And then based on further discussions with the town engineer, we all agreed that we would do something more and get more detail on speed. And now we do it with a radar gun. Well, they're all with radar guns, but this is a radar gun set up for 7 days 24 hours a day. So we obviously collect a lot of data. And it's interesting, but the sampling we did with the gun on the side of the road for a sampling time and the machine we put out for 7 days, we actually had the exact same results, which was, I think, 29 miles per hour against a 25 mile per hour posted speed limit on Beach Road itself. So what it says is for that speed of 29, and we use that for both directions, is that we would need, following conduct standards, which is something that Laura Puglia suggested she would like to see on a town road also, we would need 319 feet of sight distance. That's, I guess, about the length of a football field. We can provide that. But as you know, there is parking on Beach Road. They're not designated parking spaces, meaning they're not striped parking spaces that like you might see on the post road in the center of town. But there's parking permitted along the curb line from our driveway or from our site towards Old Post Road. And certainly towards Post Road, there are spaces between driveways in front of the office building next to us. And there's some parking across the street as you go along the church frontage, actually. We find that there's not a high demand for parking on Beach Road itself. If you look at the graphic figure 2, all of the development on Beach Road, pretty much all of it has fairly large parking areas to serve their patrons, whether it's the Irish Club, the medical building, or the funeral home, or even our site today under its current conditions. Advanced Radiology has parking wrapped around its building, and I think there's a dentist or someone in between that has parking. So everyone has parking, and that's one of the reasons why there are 13 driveways on Beach Road itself. Going back to Beach Road and looking at the other driveways that exist, I mentioned that a lot of the driveways don't have this standard, which is the conduct standards for measuring sight distance based on an actual speed. If you go back into the regulations of the town, it simply says you need to provide adequate and safe conditions for a driveway. It didn't mention any measurements or distances at the point. But based on our discussions with the town engineering department, we went through this process and we show what we can obtain. But we would do this, we'd have to remove parking, which is something you see on many projects around town. My concern is if we do this in every development, every driveway, we'll have no parking in town. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just trying to, I see this like you every Tuesday or every other Tuesday, and it's a concern. And if you look at the accident data, it's not showing unsafe conditions on Beach Road, not at our driveway, but the other driveways themselves. So I just, raise the flag that while we can provide the parking on our site to accommodate whatever we might take off, if that's the desire of the commission, what I'm seeing really as far as what the town's been doing is they're providing site triangles, which is another definition for how we don't have parking within an area coming out of a driveway, for example, or a side street itself. And just for reference, and I'm not trying to cause any harm or any concern, but if you go to the Old Post Road at the library, the Fairfield Library on the corner, there's about one space where there's no parking when you come out of that driveway looking south towards Old Post Road and the YMCA itself. To the right, of course, there's a lane for Post Road, so there's no parking. Across the street from the library, there's the bank exit or entrance. Actually, there's a small house that's an office building next to it. There's parking right up to the driveway itself. Along Post Road, there's parking up to each of the driveways, whether it's Brick Walk or all the different buildings along that side. The other restaurants going towards Sherman Green, Rite Aid towards my office, and the bank that's next to my office. There's parking right up to the driveways in each case. And again, this decision's been made at some point, and I don't disagree with it, that parking in a way was more important for the downtown. And it's, Fairfield is no different than any other town, whether it's Greenwich or Darien or whatever. Parking is a valuable need in downtown areas. And you typically will find parking wherever you can find parking on the street itself. I just say we're trying to compare, and we're certainly ready to address, taking parking spaces off the street to provide the sight line. But I'm wondering if it's really a need to take off 319 feet of parking, whatever that works out to 6 spaces or so, in order to provide the sight line when we find the conditions on Beach Road. Again, it's difficult to say safe, but they're adequate certainly to accommodate the needs of these driveways. So I touch on that, and in this case, the town's reviewing it. There's no Connecticut DOT review because it's a town road. We provide the guidelines followed by the town and the standards for sightline. Is it best or desirable to have the sightline on our driveway for 319? Sure, it's desirable, but is it actually really needed? I raised that question, and we all do this together, and I'm just trying to be open-minded about this whole aspect of it. I think I'll go ahead.
Thanks. Before
Yes.
we move on, then it's the chair.
Yes.
Before you move on, then I think it bears some inquiry then with respect to the sightlines. I mean, there have been a lot of things in our history that have persisted because that's just simply the way things were done, or because we as a society just weren't smart enough to understand that that what we were doing wasn't healthy or safe or good for us. I mean, just look at seatbelts in cars, for example, and 3 points versus a lap belt. I mean, when I was growing up, we didn't have seatbelts at all.
Correct. I remember those days.
And so we learn as a society, and we evolve and progress. And today, it is the standard that we have adequate sightlines for the safety of our residents and for the drivers who are both traveling the roadways and also coming into and out of the developments. And I was just reviewing Ms. Pooley's email where she expressly concludes that sightlines can be achieved if the parking spaces are eliminated, but that if the parking spaces are not eliminated, then this driveway cannot be considered safe.
Yes, I know exactly what you're reading from, and I appreciate that. But they're not standards. I mean, the town doesn't have a standard that says you should follow conduct standards. But the town engineer, and with all due respect to her, certainly, and I'm going to be here tomorrow just like you, but it's a guideline that we're all following, and we can provide it. I'm not saying we can't provide it. I'm just providing a comparison for you for consideration. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like the installation. It's also the installation of sidewalks. I mean, there are in untold areas around town where forethought didn't include the idea that sidewalks were desirable or safe. And I mean, you'll agree with me, won't you, Mr. Galante, that if we can today, when redeveloping a parcel, we should include sidewalks so that the children can walk to the corner of the bus stop and they're not walking in the middle of the street. I think that's
I agree.
Right.
I agree. And put a sidewalk there will come, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. Many sidewalks, when they were installed, right. And I'm thinking of one particular road, but I won't mention the name in town, I was shaking my head why we put a sidewalk in there, but people use it.
Yeah.
But, the standard that we have for sightlines, it's not necessary from a functional point of view, just from what we're seeing on Beach Road itself. But we can provide it if the commission decided we had to provide it.
Well, you as a professional traffic engineer and expert, I mean, is it your testimony that you don't believe that adequate sightlines are necessary for the safety of this, project, for the ingress and egress?
I would say certainly desirable. Absolutely. But is it necessary? The data for accident history on 13 driveways doesn't show that it's actually necessary. And that's my only point of making that statement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Please.
I think I'm finished for the moment.
Very good. Attorney.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Verstig is up next in the batting order, so to speak, and I see Joe is here.
Yep. Before you get there, the video was all the share screen, so I didn't see all the other commissioners. Did any of the other commissioners have any questions or for Mr. Galante? Yeah, Commissioner Braun. Yeah, thank you. And then can I see Commissioner Brayman also? Okay, very good. Commissioner Braun, you're on mute.
There are 40 units, 16 one-bedroom and 24 two-bedroom. The total bedrooms is 64 bedrooms. So I would anticipate 64 to maybe 100 human beings living there, many of which will have cars, but there's only 55 parking spaces provided on site. So where do you anticipate the overflow parking going?
Well, we can provide, if we were to provide parking spaces for any spaces that come off Beach Road itself, we would have about 1.15 spaces per unit. And I know in other developments in town, you provided one space per unit, I think at a minimum, and I think that would be adequate. That's kind of the standard we've been following in town.
So if there is overflow parking, where will they park, considering the issue you have with sightline and perhaps the need to get rid of public spaces on the public road like you suggested on other applications?
Well, there are other parking spaces on Beach Road that still will be there if we were to remove any parking spaces for our sightlines. There's still plenty of parking available.
So any overflow parking would park on Beach Road somewhere, and if you had to remove spaces to get a necessary sightline, they would just have to park farther away, I guess?
No, it's right across the street and along the church frontage, actually, or on our side of the road, so it's Old Post Road. There are parking spaces within a very short distance of the front entrance to our building, our proposed building. And they are public spaces, so anyone can really use those spaces.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely.
Okay, Commissioner Brayman?
There you are.
All right. Could you, Mr. Galante, just refresh us on the accident data that you believe supports the proposition that the sightlines, while desirable, are not necessary?
Yeah, the accident data we have is from the Fairfield Police Department for a 3-year period, basically 2016 through 2019. The data shows that, well, there's actually one accident related to a deer, so we'll take that one out. So there were 4 accidents. 3 accidents were related to an angled accident, meaning at a driveway. And in this case, it was the driveway for the medical building, which is the brick building across the street next to the gas station, and between the gas station and the fuel home, that building there. And right next to that is the Irish Club driveway that goes to the back behind the funeral home. Over a 3-year period, there were 3 right-angled accidents at that combined driveway. There's actually 2 driveways. Everywhere else, there was 1 accident nearby that was related to a truck backing up. So let's kind of take that out of the equation. It's really those 3 angled accidents at the medical building, Irish Club driveways that are next to each other. There are no other accidents along that stretch of road, and happy to say, with 13 driveways, there aren't any other reported accidents. Now, there are accidents reported at the intersection of Old Post Road. I'm not forgetting that, just focusing on Beach Road itself.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Any other commissioners have any other questions for Mr. Galante before we let him go? Okay, thank you. Attorney Smith.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, at this time, I think Mr. Versteeg is ready. Fire safety issues. Thank you.
Good evening. Joe Versteeg, Versteeg Associates for the applicant. You have in your possession, in your files, my letter of this past June 29th, in which I state that I reviewed the site plan, the fire department vehicle access plan, as well as the architectural floor plans and elevations, and found those to be compliant with the Connecticut State Building Code, Fire Code, and Fire Prevention Code, both the current codes and the ones that are proposed for adoption in Connecticut. This information is supported by an email from Fire Marshal Higgins to the applicant, Mr. Tangangelo, and a copy to the fire chief that they have reviewed the site plan for fire department vehicle access and find it acceptable to the fire department. Unless you have any questions.
Very good. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Versteeg? Yes, Commissioner Braun.
When they do these fire access analyses, what do they look at? Do they look at the plans, or do they go to the site and look at traffic conditions?
There are very specific requirements in the fire safety code that establish the criteria for numbers of accesses into the site, the width of the roadways, turning radius to accommodate the trucks so that they're not going up on a curb. And all of that can be evaluated from the site plan that is drawn to scale, matched against the specifications of the fire truck.
You're on mute, Commissioner Braun.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did anyone check it out based on overflow parking on all sides of the road, you know, maxed out in the parking lot and everything else? Do they look at that when they do these evaluations?
I'm assuming they did. We did.
So you did, your analysis included, what does your analysis consist of that's different than what the fire department would do?
Basically exactly the same thing.
What did you do? Maybe you could tell me.
We looked at the site plan that was to scale. We took the data from the fire department vehicles, and we provided turning radiuses and determined that the trucks could actually turn in. They could actually park in proper location and could operate effectively.
And that's with cars parked on both sides right up to where the driveways are of this location, of this
Yes.
facility? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions for Mr. Versteeg? Thank you. Attorney Smith.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We did generate a couple of exhibits that were requested, and we did submit some other material. I don't know if that's on the screen or not, but I would like to indicate that some of the information that we did submit to the commission were copies of your approvals for three different. Here we go. Thank you, Emmeline. I could walk you through it, but I'd like to just address the parking component first that was brought up. Question. Okay, that looks like the agenda. So that's the zone data table I'll come back to in a moment, but towards the end, we did provide you, thank you, Emmeline, a little further, and we can go back to the front. Just, there were three different approvals. Right here, Emmeline, would be fine, any of those. So there were three different approvals, and just from a parking ratio standpoint, at 980 High Street, it's my understanding, our understanding that that was 40 units, and the parking ratio there was 1.15. We also provided a copy of the approval for 78 Uncowa Place, 26 units, and our understanding is that the parking ratio there was 1.0. And similarly with 1675 Post Road, I believe that's known as Ruane. I think that was 13 units, and it's our understanding that was one parking space per unit. And the point being that we feel, as Mr. Galante indicated, that certainly my client feels that the number of parking spaces being provided, even if there is an offset for any spaces that parking areas that may be removed to accommodate areas for a sight line, would be, we have a minimum that 1.0 per unit. I believe that if we have to give up, I can walk through those numbers, but we can deal with those later. But we're well within what has been approved for those other three sites, and that's one of the reasons those three approvals are in there. The next item on there, I can do this very quickly, thank you, Emmeline, is a letter from a trash removal vendor. That question came up on trash removal, and my client asked a sanitation company that he utilizes for other properties to review the the drawings, the site plan, architectural drawings, and I won't read the entire letter, but it's dated September 14, 2020. And it states, quote, "I have reviewed your plans for 131 Beach Road, and we will be able to service this address when constructed. It is an industry standard compactor system and presents no special challenges. We service several other locations with very similar compactor layouts, and the driveway and parking lot provide adequate room for even our largest trucks to safely enter and service. The trash container does indicate that it does have cameras and whatnot, as most trash haulers do on their trucks." Going back to the first exhibit, we were requested relative to the zone text amendment to generate zone map, and this was prepared. That does indicate with a 600-foot radius, which are some of the minimal requirements for a property to qualify for the proposed text amendment provisions. And you will see in the double hatched areas, those are on those properties. Those are the properties that would qualify. The one on the north side of Beach Road, the rectangle, of course, is ours. And they have the property across the street. I'm not sure if that's 2 lots or 1. It's my understanding it's 1, but I could be wrong. And then there's another rectangular lot along the old post road. But I do note that those are in split zones. And I'm not sure how your split zone regulations work and whether you would be able to utilize this provision on either one of those 2 lots, or if you would be restricted to the area that's located in the Residence A zone. So again, you did, that was requested of us, so we wanted to make sure that we did get that to you. And I'm just going through this quickly to accommodate the public tonight and any comments or questions the commission may have. We also provided you with a view shed analysis and a couple more slides on the line. That's just depicting that there's no parking, designated parking or striping on Beach Road, as I think Mr. Galante indicated. The next slide is the view shed analysis. We took the 3 adjacent residential properties. Obviously, we can't access those properties. So what my client essentially did is had a drone and then went up to what would essentially be the second floor levels for those 3 properties from the property lines, not going over their property from what I understand, and then looking back at the subject property. And you can see through the next series of slides that's designated which properties are being depicted with that view shed looking back at the subject property. I respectfully suggest that I did see very late this afternoon there was a petition filed, and there were some other, the petition might have included artist renderings, or it might have been in a separate email. I apologize, I just don't know for certain where I saw them, but it's my understanding that some of the photoshopping or depictions with the renderings there might not include all of the vegetation that you can obviously see with these photographs that were just taken, I believe, within the last week. So just very quickly to run you through those items, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, just wanted to just give you a quick overview as to what was the supplemental material that we did request. I'm sorry, we did submit most of it at your request. So in conclusion, that concludes our presentation at this point. I don't know if there are any further questions from the commissioners, and or if we're just going to go straight to the public, which would be fine, and we'll reserve, obviously, our rebuttal to respond to any further questions from the commission or items and issues that may be raised by the citizens. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that. So, Emmeline, if you could go back to the full screen so I can see people. Thanks very much. So with that, the applicant's presentation is concluded. And now we'll turn to the public hearing portion of the public hearing. And, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning of this section, we did receive a letter from Attorney Green with a request that the public hearing portion be adjourned until our next meeting in about a month on October 13, 2020. And that letter sets forth a couple of reasons, specifically parking, traffic study, traffic volumes, and such. So I thought that the best way to proceed here would be to first open the floor to Attorney Green to present his argument here on this motion, so that we could. Hold on one moment. My apologies for that interruption. So that Attorney Green could make his argument, and that could also hear a response from the applicant, Attorney Smith, I presume, who opposes the motion, and then we could make a decision about whether to proceed in some fashion, either entirely, recognizing the deadlines, or hear what we can from members of the public, and then with a further opportunity for a public comment on October 13th, or just simply granting the motion and continuing the hearing. So those are the three alternatives that I perceive, and without really sort of prejudging the circumstance, I just wanted to give the opportunity to foundation here. So, Commissioner Braun, you have a question?
The materials that Attorney Smith just presented, I cannot find in any of my emails. Were we given this ahead of time? I don't recognize it in any of the material we've received so far. I'm sure we got it, but I don't know when. I can't find it.
Okay, Ms. Wendt, can you send Commissioner Braun resent?
Yeah, I believe that was sent to the commission. It has been posted to our website as well. We can resend it if you need it.
Yeah, could you send it? I'll look on the website also.
Okay, I can't send it from where I am, but it is. It's in our department. It's under the Beach Road of pending applications, supplemental material. It's on the website.
I think if you click on the links, right, in the agenda, that'll take you to the.
Should.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Attorney Green.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff, and the public. My name is Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport, albeit remotely lately, with the law offices of Green and Gross. It's my pleasure to appear before you this evening on behalf of the Old Post Road Area Association, which is a nonprofit local community organization that seeks to preserve and enhance the historic character of the Old Post Road neighborhood and promote a sense of community for the residents in and around Old Post Road. I guess to get to it, Mr. Chairman, I have filed a letter. I filed a letter on Friday. I did request a continuance of this matter. With my letter, I had submitted a letter from a licensed professional engineer, Fraser Walsh, with Zubik Carr and Associates, who the Old Post Road Association or Area Association has retained. It is our position, based on this letter, that at present we are unable to generate and verify the traffic data that the applicant had submitted. I don't know if all the members of the commission received my letter. I can read the salient portions in for the benefit of the public, however the chairman would like to proceed. But what I said basically is that my client has retained a traffic consultant that had informed us that a complete and accurate traffic study could not be completed in advance of the public hearing on July 14th due to the various impacts of the present COVID situation. More specifically, the restrictions imposed by state and local officials and the resulting reductions in normal traffic volumes the required field data necessary to confirm the true functional level of service of Beach Road in the vicinity of the proposed development could not be obtained with reliable accuracy. I attached a letter from Zubik Carr and Associates confirming that it has still not been able to compile accurate field data necessary to complete its work and to document its findings in advance of the scheduled hearing. I had referenced the executive orders issued by the governor in support of my request. I have spoken with Mr. Wendt. I was not specifically aware of the original filing dates because, frankly, I wasn't retained in this matter till, I believe, June, and I frankly did not look back specifically for the exact filing dates. But Mr. Wendt has provided a calculation that suggests that the 90 days was expended by the commission by virtue of COVID in scheduling the initial session of the public hearing. I've looked at the emergency orders. I could make an argument, but let's accept Mr. Wendt's interpretation of that. He did provide a calculation today that I presume that he also provided to the commission. And his conclusion is that any extension at this point would be one that would be dependent on the acquiescence or consent of the applicant pursuant to 8-3 and the time limits set forth in it. I believe that the applicant could arguably and conceivably allow an additional up to 51 days from today, as I understand it, to complete the public hearing. I have contacted Attorney Smith and suggested and requested that the public hearing be held open. The applicant has denied that request. I would bolster that request tonight by suggesting, first of all, that there were some new materials submitted by the applicant, which Attorney Smith was good enough to email to me, but unfortunately I didn't get them till this morning. He was tied up yesterday and sent them to me, and I got them in my email this morning. So there are some new materials. I did see them today, but I really haven't had a chance to review them with my client. I would suggest that I can't produce a traffic consultant at this time because we could not complete the study. I was struck by the remarks by Mr. Galante, particularly the comment, quote, "No one is taking the train now." And I know that no one is taking the train and no one is taking the bus. And obviously, it's our opinion, and again, based on the opinion of our licensed professional engineer, that accurate traffic volumes cannot be obtained at the present time. Now, I know I'm using up a lot of Zoom time here, but let me just add a few other comments. Mr. Wendt and I have, and he's been very cooperative and very helpful. And he did suggest, our traffic volume is really going to change over the next 51 days. I would suggest that school is back in session as of last week. Our consultant indicated that he couldn't do the mirror testing for 7 days after school had started, and he couldn't initiate that in time for tonight. I note that the applicant had generated their numbers pre-COVID and had gotten out front for that. I would also offer that it's 20 to 9 right now, and I think that there are many members of the public who probably want to speak this evening, so I'm not sure that we would conclude within the typical time limit anyway. But I guess I would renew my request to the applicant so that the public has a full and fair opportunity. And as the commission knows, the proceedings of this commission are guided by the rules of fundamental fairness. I do note that the statute does provide the applicant with the requirement of consent, but I believe that these are extraordinary circumstances that we are all confronted with. And as we all sit here in front of our screens and our front of our respective computers. These are extraordinary times. And I suppose I've been trying to figure out what to ask the commission for. And I guess my initial reaction was the commission cannot, in and of itself, grant me the request, I suppose, based on the interpretation Mr. Wendt has provided. But the commission could certainly strongly recommend or have a sense of the body or sense of the commission vote that, as to whether it feels that an extension is fair and equitable. I suppose that this could be an issue on appeal later in terms of, whether the rules of fundamental fairness. And I believe that the commission is bound to conduct a full fundamentally fair hearing, but I believe that the applicant has to cooperate as well. And I think the applicant has not really engaged in that spirit of cooperation, although Attorney Smith has been very courteous. And that's about all I have to say. But once again, my engineer cannot provide the report that we need. And here I sit.
Thank you, Attorney Green. Is Mr. Walsh here tonight?
He is not.
So you'll agree with me that, given the interpretation that staff has provided of the relevant dates, if we were to simply adjourn and the time period expires, the application would be, I believe it's deemed granted. And so,
I left one item out, by the way, if I may.
Yeah. Yes.
A significant item that I noticed this evening as I was feverishly trying to log in, because somehow when I copy the agendas, for some reason it doesn't trigger the link always. And when I saw the agenda this evening, I note that the text amendment is not noticed on the agenda tonight, and I just printed it. And I note that under the public hearing, unlike in July, it only references the compliance application. So I wonder, and I haven't had a chance to research this, as to whether it modifies the this gets complicated with the governor's executive orders, because this was not a matter of publication. It's a matter of notice on the website. And I note that there's a subsequent agenda published that doesn't show the text amendment. So I wonder the degree to which that causes public confusion as to what is being taken up before the commission. So I would suggest that would be another reason for the commission, in my view, to receive public comment tonight. And we may use up the time till 10:30 easily. And in the spirit of cooperation and fairness, ask the applicant to consent to a continuance. And so we would use the commission's time efficiently and have a fair hearing. I'm done.
Thank you for your arguments. You'll agree with me that, given the time periods that Mr. Wendt has calculated, that without the consent of the applicant, the commission's hands are tied, right? We must proceed, right?
I accept, for purposes of this argument, I accept the premise, reserving my rights to argue to the contrary after further research.
Fair enough. So, with that, I'll turn it over to Attorney Smith and ask for your response, and quite pointedly, whether the applicant consents to proceed with as much public hearing as we can get to, recognizing, of course, as Attorney Green just suggested, given the hour and the members of the public that, want to participate, that we may not finish tonight anyway. But, very pointedly, I'll ask for the record whether the applicant is willing to consent to continuing the hearing to October 13th as requested.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Chris Smith. At the outset, I just would like to, I know Town Planner Mr. Wendt did prepare a timeline for the commission, but just for the record, this application was filed in February of 2020. There was obviously a delay to the opening of the hearing. There is a traffic study with counts that were done before COVID earlier this year. We received a letter from an attorney Miller indicating that he was sending a letter on, it was this quasi, wasn't really representing anyone, but requesting for additional time in the anticipation that a traffic study with traffic counts, new traffic counts could be done. But obviously back in May, there wasn't really much different than it is today. There wasn't anything that would be comparable as far as traffic to what was done relative to Mr. Galante's report before the COVID situation. This was renewed, this request, as Attorney Green indicated, back at July 14th hearing. We were asked at that point, my client was asked to agree to continue on with the governor's 90 days under the executive order. My client had to provide some additional time to get us to tonight. And then again, we heard just last Friday that there was more time needed to do a traffic count. And I did call opposing counsel, Attorney Green, who's been always, as always, is very accommodating and gracious. But I did indicate to Attorney Green that there hasn't been any change in the traffic conditions from earlier this year to now. I don't think that anyone can anticipate any changes between now, October, the end of the year, or unfortunately into next year sometime. And that there's an existing traffic study. And if their engineer wanted to review and do a peer review and critique Mr. Galante's report, they certainly had every right to do that and every ability to do that. And I was told that we would probably be tied up tonight, that citizens could get up and filibuster or whatever, but they wouldn't be able to do a traffic study. Now, I just wanted to make sure that the facts were into the record. And it's my understanding that the traffic engineer can do these traffic counts in a fairly short time period at this point in time. There's no reason to go to the middle of October. And I just think that it's it's very important to have this into the record. I think that Attorney Green, if he has experts, I did receive a couple of resumes this afternoon. I'm not quite sure why Mr. Walsh is not here tonight. I think they could do their presentation with whoever the consultants are. They should go forward tonight, Mr. Chairman, finish what they have to say, and then we can hear from the public. There's no reason for the public to get up and essentially filibuster so that we don't hear from any of the other consultants, and maybe there aren't any other consultants. And again, for whatever reason, Mr. Walsh isn't here this evening. I think it's fair to say that if that does occur, that my client at the end of this meeting would certainly be open to considering to grant additional time through your next meeting, which I believe is September 29th. That was something that I had talked with staff about if we needed time for rebuttal, to be perfectly frank with you and the commission. So we could certainly do that. If that were to occur, whoever the traffic consultant is will certainly have more than enough time between now and September 29th, which is 2 weeks from today, to do whatever traffic counts they want to. Nothing's going to change. Fairfield U is not going to come back in full swing, or Sacred Heart. And that was one of the things when Mr. Galante did his study. He waited for the colleges to come back to do his study. So that study could be done, and they could present that component of whatever their study is at that point in time on the 29th. And presumably we would be able to finish up with the public and we can do our rebuttal. Okay. Again, I think that it would be talk about due fairness and fundamental fairness. I heard thrown out there that wonderful phrase that we have in all those wonderful court cases. Fundamental fairness, I think, would dictate that if there is opposition, we're going to hear legal arguments. We're going to hear from any other consultants tonight. That it would be fundamentally fair to hear from those people tonight, and then hear from whatever citizens we need to hear from until the curfew, which I think is at 10 o'clock, I was advised. Correct. And then if the commission saw fit, my client would be willing to go to September 29th. And the opposition, whomever, the neighbors that would like to have a traffic count done, they can certainly do it. It won't make any difference if it's done within the next couple of weeks or kicked out to October. So thank you. So that's our position, Mr. Chairman.
Understood, and very much appreciated. I'm glad that you both had an opportunity to state your, arguments for the record and the facts. I think that your position is sound. And without further ado, then I will ask for members of the public to please come forward and speak. So let's see, Ms. Harrigan.
Yes, I
Yes.
forwarded you.
I'm sorry, 1 second, Attorney
Sorry, go
Smith
ahead.
raised his hand.
Yep. I was under the impression, Mr. Chairman, with Attorney Green, that if he had any individuals tonight or any legal arguments to be made, that typically that's what happens is legal counsel goes first with any consultants, and then we hear from the public. I think that would be fair to hear that.
Well, fine. I asked Attorney Green if Mr. Walsh was here, and apparently he's not. So, Attorney Green, are you prepared to go forward with any other experts or arguments this evening?
I have a presentation that's I can start it, and in the context of my presentation, I do have an expert on historic preservation. So, but it would be in the context, and it would be in the larger context of my presentation. So
your preference would be, if this does carry over to September 29th, to put forth your entire argument and all of your experts in one cohesive moment.
I would. And I'm not sure we're going to do a report. I don't know if we're going to be generating a report, but if we have a report, then I'll submit it to Attorney Smith in advance of the hearing. I don't know if we're going to be doing a report, though, frankly.
With respect to?
Well, obviously, I'm going to speak to our traffic consultant and see if he can accommodate us in the next 2 weeks. He has a pretty robust schedule at the moment, but I certainly appreciate the continuance, and I appreciate the courtesy and the thought that's gone into that. And without minimizing that, I greatly appreciate it. But if there's going to be a traffic report, I will endeavor to get it to the commission and certainly to Attorney Smith in advance. And if we have any other reports that we're going to submit, I will provide them to the commission and Attorney Smith in advance of the hearing. But I would propose to start my presentation then on the 29th.
All right. I am, all things considered, inclined to follow that path. And I am mindful, Attorney Smith, that the applicant here holds the consent card. All right. If the applicant doesn't consent to this extension, I have to close this public hearing this evening, because to do otherwise will implicate the statutory deadline, and the application will be deemed granted because we will run afoul of that. So if the applicant is going to consent, which I think is very generous and appropriate, to holding the hearing open to the 29th for one final 2-week period, then I would propose that Attorney Green, and on behalf of his client, with his presentation in one argument, in one cohesive argument.
And for the record, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, my client consents to that.
Very well.
Go through the 29th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and please pass along our thanks to your client for the cooperation, which is noted. Okay.
Thank you to Attorney Green to offer to provide us with any reports or material that will be filed with the commission for the 29th.
I appreciate that. So with that, we have many other members of the public who have been waiting patiently, and I'm pleased to ask any members of the public wish to be heard on this application. Ms. Harrigan, do we have a list of folks that signed up?
Yep, I sent them to you privately in the chat. I think I sent you 4 names at this point. I've tried to send reminders in the chat that if other members of the public would like to speak, if they could send me their names in the chat. Right now, I've forwarded you 4. Do you want me to say them, or do you have that?
I see them. I see them. It
Okay.
looks like Alden Stevens signed up first.
I just unmuted myself. Good evening, Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Alden Stevens. I live at 472 Old Post Road. I've lived there for over 30 years. My property abuts the back of the Masonic Temple property, which is 131 Beach Road. I'm just concerned with the size of the proposed building. I recognize that Fairfield needs affordable housing, and I think that could be accomplished with a building that has fewer than 40 units and still adheres to the 30% rule for affordable housing. I just think that this proposed building is too dense, too high, and the footprint is too big for this district. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next on the list is, hold on, I just lost it. Sorry. Here we go. James Millard.
You unmute me?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is James Miller. I'm a resident of the town of Fairfield for over 50 years, and I'm an attorney practicing law. And I represent a client that lives on the Old Post Road named Cooley at number 406. If it's possible at this time to reserve my comments to follow Mr. Green on the 29th, I would like to do it that way if I can, so that I have heard the full presentation of both parties.
I think given the circumstances that that seems appropriate. So and for that matter, given the circumstances, you know, I'll make a general announcement since we will continue to the 29th. I mean, if any member of the public, you know, wishes to speak tonight, please do, and I would encourage you to do so. But since the public hearing will be held open, there will be another opportunity for public comment on the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next on the list is Dr. Henry Backey. Dr.
All right,
Backey.
I found my unmute button, and hopefully my video will come up.
There you go.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to thank you for this opportunity. My name is Henry Backey. I live at 388 Old Post Road here in Fairfield. I've been a resident there for 28 years. I was a former commissioner of the for 10 years, and I've been involved with the Old Post Road Area Association since I moved here. I have recently been elected as president, and therefore I wish to read a letter to you, Mr. Commissioner, and your fellow commissioners and the staff. So I speak to you commissioners tonight as president of the Old Post Road Area Association regarding the proposal to develop a 0.65-acre property at 131 Beach Road, formerly the site of the Masonic Temple. This property is currently zoned for a single-family dwelling. However, as proposed by Mr. Glenn Tangelo and his development company, Love Where You Live, they are seeking to build a 60-foot-high apartment building consisting of 40 rental units located on 4 floors above a street-level parking, open-air structured parking with 55 spaces, essentially amounting to a 5-story building.
I'm gonna let you hold this.
The impact of 100 plus additional people possibly living on this half-acre lot would have significant negative impact on traffic and safety in what is already a very busy neighborhood. This project is built as proposed, may be the most densely populated dwelling per acre in our entire town. For numerous years, we have had many discussions with town officials and the Fairfield Police Department about traffic safety issues in this area, and in particular at the intersection of Old Poach and Beach Roads. And I wondered why the traffic consultant didn't really look at the accident count on the Old Post Road where all these people are going to exit when they try to avoid the traffic on the Post Road. So this area is in close proximity to the Post Road, several public buildings, schools, a funeral home, a social club, and medical buildings, as we all have heard, all of which generate significant traffic on Beach Road as well as the Old Post Road. The Old Post Road is a police and fire emergency route and also a well-known alternative route through town when I-95 and the Post Road are congested. The proposed development would also require that 6 current on-street parking spaces on Beach Road be eliminated to allow adequate sight lines for exit from the new complex. These parking spots are used frequently by town residents and visitors attending church services, meetings, classes, as well as public functions held on the town green. I would argue with the consultant that if he ever did a traffic study on a Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, when there's a craft fair, there are no parking spaces available. Homes in this neighborhood are single-family structures on the average lot size of 0.75 acres, 2 to 6 occupants. The building as proposed will tower over and encroach on the property lines of abutting historic and non-historic homes and adversely affect their open space, wind flow, and sun exposure. As proposed, it will also add significant light pollution in a residential zone. Besides the traffic and public safety hazards, this property abuts the area designated by the state of Connecticut as the Old Post Road Historic District. All the residential properties in the historic district are required to adhere to a strict set of guidelines to ensure that the unique historic character of the neighborhood is preserved and maintained for our future generations. The parameters and design of this proposed building are completely incongruous to the neighborhood. Its massing, design, and height will be juxtaposed against much smaller historic homes and adversely affect the appearance and historic identity of the town green and the Old Post Road neighborhood. We understand the developer is seeking approval from you, the TPZ commissioners, under the Connecticut Statute 830G, which is intended to encourage more affordable housing in towns that are less than 10% of housing certified as affordable. The association acknowledges the need for affordable housing in Fairfield and fully supports the intent of this noble statute, and we would wholeheartedly welcome 830G affordable development in our neighborhood. However, we are also fully aware that this statute has too often been used by predatory developers to designate 30% of use as affordable and thus reap the benefits of 830G to bypass local zoning regulations governing building height, lot coverage, and distance from other properties and roads, as well as the density and neighborhood property values. To bypass and ignore such zoning regulations would be detrimental to the safety and well-being of this residential neighborhood. Our opposition to this proposed building, density of the building size, number of applicants, number of cars, and its design are all incongruous to the neighborhood. We encourage the town to strive for affordable housing and seek developments that encourage walking over driving, give low to intermediate income families the choice to live closer to their work, and give retired seniors an affordable alternative to stay in Fairfield. We would applaud the development of this site if it were made 100% affordable housing and decrease the density and number of units by 50%. An appropriate design building of such a reduced size would be safer and more fitting to our neighborhood. 50% less traffic would minimize the impact of vehicular and pedestrian safety and an overall public health of the neighborhood for the enjoyment of all who frequent the town hall municipal buildings, events on town green, concerts and exhibits at the Fairfield History Center, attend the churches, attend the preschools and after-school activities, as well as visit their doctor's offices and attend funerals. We urge the developer to reconsider the size and design of this project so that it can be a model for the town's long-range development, be inclusionary for all comers, and encourage residents to walk and not drive when possible, as well as be congruous to the neighborhood. We love where we live, and we want to continue to be able to do so. We ask you, the commissioners of Town Planning and Zoning, to deny this application as it is presented so that we can work with the developer to come back with a suitable plan that benefits the entire community and one that maximizes the benefits of the 830G affordable housing statute. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Beck.
I'll go on.
Next in line is Brian Farnan.
Yep, just unmuting right now.
Excellent.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Farnan. I live at 394 Roland Road. I'm also a state representative, and I am a longtime Beach resident, and I'm speaking to oppose this 60-foot, 40-unit apartment complex where the former Masonic Lodge is situated. I'm concerned about the public safety and traffic issues that the development could potentially bring. Beach Road alone has multiple offices and medical buildings, a church, a food pantry, a club, a funeral home, and other business. The structure could add up to 80 additional cars to this already congested stretch of space and could potentially eliminate on-street parking spaces there. We have to realize that not every site will accommodate every development. I hope the developer would be agreeable to scale back the project in a way that addresses the public safety and traffic concerns of the community and the neighbors that I've spoken to. This is a great location near mass transit, so we do want to encourage residential development here and hope to see that happen. But we need to be respectful of the historic nature of the location, as well as the serious traffic and safety concerns raised by so many tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farnan. Paul Fama. Mr. Fama.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much for Mr. Chairman and Commissioners for allowing us to have time with you tonight. I know it's very late and you're volunteering your time just like all of us here tonight because we're passionate about our town, we're passionate about development, and we're passionate about how important the quality of life is in our town. So I'm here tonight, probably not as eloquently as some of the other speakers, to let you know that we are absolutely opposed to the development as stated. We've lived here for 12 years on the old Post Road, on a 1947 house, which sits one of the three houses on the old Ann Jennings estate. When we moved here, we were the ones that renovated, went to the Historic Commission, found out there were apple trees that were growing on Ann Jennings' property and planted 6 of them. We found out that in her garden there are irises and many other indigenous flowers that we planted in the front of the yard. This proposal is not in the spirit of any of those things. And I am voicing an opinion that we have over 1,200 signatures of people. This is not a filibuster. This is a community that cares as deeply as you do, that we make the right decisions in a residentially zoned area. You know, from our neighbors to politicians to, you know, residents throughout Fairfield, we want to send a clear message that we are for affordable housing, you know, and this project is just too big. And as you could see from the, although we were given a stay to 2 more weeks, that the developer has not listened to anyone in the community about the size, scope, and safety concerns that we have, and has not changed the project. We've seen increased traffic. We've seen environmental concerns. You know, it's going to overwhelm the historic district. In fact, it's going to be taller than Town Hall. So when you look out the windows of the Historic District Commission or this group, you will see this building. And we have to ask ourselves, are we proud of this development? And I know that there are laws that help us decide what is right, but there's also room in those laws for you to use your best judgment.
Thank you. Just sorry to interrupt you. Anybody who's not speaking, please mute your lines. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. I know that the laws are to be followed and your job is to make sure that they are followed. But this is too important of an area not to have a thorough discussion, not to have a place where the power and the knowledge that you possess on the TPZ Commission isn't used to its fullest. We need to make sure that every developer not just technically gets it right, but get it right for the right reasons. We are not against affordable housing. We are against safety issues and the future of what this causes. As we stated before, it doesn't look at the impact beyond 13 driveways because it has an impact on the whole community. It has an impact on all the events that we have. When you compare the Old Post Road and Beach Road to Ruan and High Street, it's impossible to think that those places have a town hall where people come for approvals and to pay their taxes, that it has parades on Memorial Day, fireworks on July 4th, church events, craft fairs, pumpkin carvings. Do those streets get treated the same as this? It's not that they're less important or more important, but there already is a community here that we are giving and making available to everybody. And I would hope that the commission takes all those things into account when they look not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law and what we want this community to become. And I'm very proud to be part of this. I was born in Fairfield, Connecticut. My father was a teacher in schools for 35 years, and I'm very proud of what we've done. This has been a very difficult time for many people, and I hope signals like this to keep development where it should be sends the right message to make everyone feel not only proud of the community, but proud of the decisions we make for future generations. So thank you very much for your time tonight. And I'll pass the baton to the next citizen.
Thank you very much for your comments. Very appreciated. Next up is Senator Huang.
Thank you, Chairman Wagner, and good evening to everyone at the Fairfield Planning Zoning Commission, and thank you for your service to our community, especially during these difficult COVID times. And I also want to acknowledge all of the participants that are spending their evening participating in obviously our public process. As an introduction, my name is State Senator Tony Huang. I represent Fairfield along with Weston, Westport, Easton, and Newtown and Sandy Hook. I want to be clear, I'm a resident of Fairfield, and it's important for people to know that Fairfield has a strong and well-documented history of supporting affordable housing because we have housing locations of Parish Court, Sullivan McKinney, Pine Tree, and in fact, we have one of the first homeless shelter that was ever built in Fairfield County in Operation Hope. And Operation Hope currently leads the state in housing supportive services. But unfortunately, all of our success and past history is not recognized under the current affordable housing statute of A30G. Connecticut General Statute, Section 8, subsection 30G, which is commonly known as A30G because it's an issue that has been in the forefront in our community. But unfortunately, all of the housing stock that I just cited, along with many others in the town of Fairfield, is not counted toward the moratorium of our volume meet to be protected under the A30G application because it was all built before 1990. Now, it is important for us to be clear, for myself and many of the people that are participating here today, is that we are supporters of affordable and workforce housing for everyone in the state of Connecticut. And I strongly believe that housing is an essential component for anyone that wants to pursue the opportunity to achieve the American dream of economic and personal success. And I am an example of that success. Having immigrated to this country and our family originally resided in federal subsidized housing, I know it's important to have a foundation of safety and an opportunity to be able to pursue these kind of dreams. And I believe it is important that every speaker that has spoken and may speak in the future has also supported affordable housing. So I will share with you a little my legislative background. I'm currently the ranking leader in the Connecticut General Assembly's Housing Committee and has served as one of its co-chairs during the 2018-2019 legislative session. I had also previously served on the Planning and Development Committee in the General Assembly as well. Therefore, I am very acquainted with the extensive experiences relative to Section 830G. And I'm speaking tonight against the 131 Beach Road Development Project, which is the former Masonic Lodge. And I'll offer you this context. We're talking about traffic safety. We're talking about density. These are all critical local factors that are under consideration. But I want to share something that a lot of people have not addressed. And we've spoken about it briefly. This location sits across the historical First Church Congregational, which dates its founding back to 1640, well before the founding of our country, and it borders the designated historical district of the Old Post Road. It is indeed a welcoming gateway to visitors to Fairfield on their way to Old Town Hall and our beautiful beaches and various other residential neighborhoods in our community. And I believe the Old Post Road's historical district, because it's critical in this discussion, because one part of it is, and I've learned from reading and learning about the history of our town and its impact on the founding of this country, is it's the original parsonage of Judge Roger Minot's Sherman House. Judge Sherman is a nephew of Roger Sherman, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. And this entire neighborhood leading down through the Old Post Road area and its designation has tremendous importance because of its tie to the founding of this country. And it has served to this day as a result of the Fairfield Museum that it's a critical continuing education as well as a preservation of the history that this country was founded in the people's fight for freedom and the birth of the new country. It's important to understand that because history is priceless. And we need to put a incredible premium on that issue. Now, I also fully understand that the applicant's attorney says it borders the high density commercial development of the Post Road. And you're right, but it's equally important for anyone who has ever walked or driven by 131 Beach Road, the Masonic Temple, as they go toward the Old Post Road neighborhood. They can understand and perhaps even subconsciously notice the transition from a dense commercial, bustling, and speedingly lifestyle of what we've done in the density of commercial development to now a slowing down and an appreciation of the architecture and the history that is the history of Fairfield and indeed of this country. It's not to be discounted. I want to really remind our commission members to recognize that buffer of 131 and First Church leading to the Old Post Road and the historical significance would be irreparably damaged by the size and density of this project. The buffer that is a important kind of breakthrough from our commercial density development is an important consideration of our local community. So when I talk about that, it's important to talk about that as an objection to this project. And I would ask of this commission to consider that if it was not for the pressure and the interpretation and the exception to your local zoning rules because of 830G, would you have approved this? Would you not consider the local impact and the historical significance that this project would irreparably damage? Now, I want to offer you something on a statutory basis that could contribute and support your decision to reject this. Because one of the biggest concerns for approval of 830G is the litigation and the possible appeal and the liability to our community to rejecting an 830G application. But I can happily share with you that in 2017, current First Selectwoman Brenda Kupchak and I worked on a bipartisan basis to make a statutory revision to 830G. That is in Public Act 17-170. And the OLR summary said, in essence, and I'll quote this from a legislative official Office of Legislative Research report that I will happily share with the commission and make it public, is one subsection of that is, how can municipalities defend an appeal brought under the 830G procedure? And it cites, now quote, municipalities cannot defend an appeal on the grounds that the application does not comply with land use regulations. Instead, to defend an appeal, municipalities must show either, this is where the change came into play. Number one, the decision was necessary to protect substantial public interest in health, safety, and other matters the municipal commission may legally consider, and that these interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing that they may legally consider, okay? And housing and cannot be protected by making reasonable changes to the proposed development. Or number two, that local control is a determining factor in regards to these kind of considerations. So it is really important that when we consider this, that local control and impact that could irreparably damage a community has to be a consideration. So I know we're going to have important discussions about this, but I ask for this commission to recognize that the history, the importance in regards to protecting the long-term interest of the community, and the fact that local control and historical consideration has to be part of this process. Because if we don't, we will create damages and things that we could never, ever reclaim. So I'm happy to answer any particular questions, but I will make these statutory information available to you. But this project is inconsistent and is potentially very damaging to the historical nature of that neighborhood and of our town.
Thank you, Senator Wong, for your remarks. I have a couple of questions, and I'm sure, and I appreciate you offering yourself for those questions.
Absolutely, sir.
I'm sure some other members of the commission do as well. You mentioned that the significance of the historic district, which abuts the proposed development, and your testimony that the project as proposed will irreparably that the historic district and the town will be irreparably damaged by the size and the structure of the proposed development. Do you believe that that is an issue which we can legally consider in rendering a decision here?
I can offer my perspective and my background in planning and development, as well as on the housing committee. And I can offer that because local control has been and continues to be a critical factor that is part of the statutory consideration. And the reason I know that is this past year, in 2019's legislative session, and this current year, there has been legislation proposed. Specifically, this legislative year, House Bill 5132, and last year's statute, I don't recollect the exact number. Mm-hmm. It was an explicit removal of local input and control from land use policies. I believe it's under Section 8-2, but it does relate to local control of our local planning. And this applies for all of our towns. The fact that the state mandates, such as 830G, can override any impact of local control. And I know as a fact, in a bipartisan basis, as the co-chair of housing, that such proposal existed back maybe even 4 or 5 years ago to remove the context of local control in local planning and zoning boards. I can share with you on a bipartisan basis with co-chairs that we insisted, all of the co-chairs insisted that local control needs to be an essential part of any zoning use and land use policy. So absolutely, I think right now, if it wasn't such an essential part of land use regulations in our statutes, people in Hartford wouldn't try to remove it.
So to that end, in your recitation of your background, do you consider yourself an expert in these subject matters?
I'm in the presence of experts like yourselves who give up your time and have extensive experience, and the likes of Mr. Smith and Mr. Green. No, I would not consider myself legal expert on any narrow aspect of each project. All I can offer to you is what we have advocated in a legislative intent, that it is critical to have local control inputted in any land use and zoning policies.
And that is what I'd like for you to expand on, is that your testimony is here is as a legislator, one of the co-chairs of the very committees through which these
former co-chair, now I'm the ranking leader,
right, through which these pieces of legislation have been passed and processed. What does it mean for us to consider the local control as a determining factor in our consideration of an 830G application?
I think the statute has been a significant debating point throughout southwestern Connecticut. That being said, I can offer to you that during the 8 years of Governor Malloy's administration, he had one bill that he vetoed and was overwritten. And that bill was Public Act 17-170, statutory revision to the content of 830G. It was a bipartisan basis, Democrats and Republicans, who said that there needed to be a revision. I think there's a uniform agreement that we need to increase affordable housing stock and workforce housing stock throughout the state. But we also felt that the statute, dating back to 1989 and implemented in 1990, has not been a effective vehicle to bring all parties to create effective solutions. That being said, we made minor changes to that statute and it was overwritten. So I think ultimately—
What do you mean overridden? You made minor changes to the statute, right?
And the governor vetoed it, and the legislative body in the Senate and the House. And it was the only bill that was overwritten during the entire 8 years of the Malloy administration.
Right.
That
And
speaks volume for the possibility that we need to do better.
Just to be clear, when you say it was overridden, the veto was overridden.
The veto was overridden, yes, sir.
And the bill passed into law.
Correct.
Right. And so the statute was amended to provide an alternative basis for local zoning commissions to consider local control as a determining factor in considering 830G applications?
I want to clarify, Mr. Chair, that the language and the details of that bill I can share with you. In regards to the interpretation of local control, I had always believed that to be an essential part of the statutory intent, to give that separation where, Hartford's mandate does not override local control impact. And I always thought that was part of the balancing act and the checks and balances. And the reason I say that it has always been is we are now considering a statutory change to remove local control. And that is where I'm saying is if there was a presumption that Hartford can dictate to all of your local zoning boards what you should do, that would have been implicit. For us to now make
it would be superfluous. They wouldn't have to do that otherwise.
Exactly. Thank you.
Right.
Excellent lawyerly answer.
I see. And so it's your opinion that the tremendous significance of the historic nature of the neighborhood in which this proposed development is cited rises to such a significant level that we should exercise our local control as a determining factor when considering this application under Section 830G, that is something we can and should legally consider. And you think that those considerations override the need for affordable housing, at least insofar as the way that this is proposed to be built today as a 60-foot unit, a fit 60.
I think in this project and the scale and the proximity is something that I cannot support, and it is an important consideration. And as you've heard from others before, they do support some component of and differing sizes. So it is not a clear objection to affordable housing.
Right.
It was an objection to the size and density and scope that is inconsistent with a buffer to the neighborhood. And it's not just the context of the incredible historical nature, but it is an important part. But many other projects throughout our town has to have the same consideration of various communities and their input and the local input. Because how many of the planning and zoning meetings have I attended in support of the community where I've heard, but for 830G, we would have rejected this project. And for me, I think we have to strike a balance where every factor of local input from experts like all of you to be able to have some points of consideration and not have a disregard because of the specter of 830G.
Sure.
And I will share with you that we have made some proposals. I represent Westport. We want to increase affordable housing stock and workforce housing stock. One such proposal we did in working with Westport was to consider some Department of Transportation open space right in the middle of Westport. And we've asked the Connecticut DOT to seize some of that land for the town of Westport to be able to build 40 possible units. That is completely funded by the town. And unfortunately, we run into roadblocks in the challenge where the DOT is not willing to relinquish the land. So my point is we need to increase affordable housing stock, but we need to collaborate between federal, state, and local authorities to create these, not simply one-way top-down. Because ultimately, Hartford doesn't know what the needs of the community. They don't know the distinction between 131 to 500 Old Post Road. But I can tell you, as I said earlier, anybody who drives from the Post Road, passing that to see First Church, to see the beautiful homes in our old town hall, will know that there's a significant buffer and difference. Hartford doesn't know that, and that's why the statute is ultimately not consistent with the local input of the people who know it best.
Right. And I think if I'm hearing you correctly, you're trying to make explicit that while in this application, the issue is the historic nature of the district, but in other parts of town, there are other considerations. It may be, conservation, wetlands. It may be beaches. It may be public space. It may be some other local interest. In this particular application, the specific local interest is the overwhelming historic nature of the neighborhood in which the proposal is cited, and the height, the scale, just the sheer scale of the proposal as the applicant has made it.
Absolutely. And I would again offer that, but for 830G and the specter of that hanging over all our board members, this project would not have been approved because it's wholly inconsistent with the values and the principles that has always been articulated by the soundness of our local zoning and planning boards.
Good. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood your testimony. Commissioner Braun, you were next. You're on mute.
Okay, I'm still muted.
You are on. I can hear you.
You basically just said what I was going to say, that it comes down to whether historical issues or environmental issues rise to the level, they clearly are things within our jurisdiction. There is no other regulatory body that can protect the environment or historic areas of our town. Conservation, when they act as the wetlands agency, they can only protect wetlands. That's it. They can't protect any other part of nature. We're the people that can do that. So,
Right.
in
So
my
we're not
opinion,
considering the application. This is
Okay.
the questions for Senator Huang.
okay. So, okay. Question for Senator Huang. Please do. Historic district rises to the level here where it satisfies, in your opinion, based on the legislative intent behind the original statute that has not been modified yet, right, to remove our local control, that the substantial public interest in health, safety, or other matters which we may legally consider includes historic districts, and this outweighs, in this instance, on this parcel, the need for affordable housing. That's your interpretation? Question mark.
It is one of many factors that obviously we can consider, but in this case, for me, being a student of history and particularly of American history, the legacy of those properties from the Sherman parsonage to the history lessons that are constantly being offered and referred to by our fabulous Fairfield Museum, the march of British soldiers from Beach Road all the way up through the streets, those are irreplaceable facets of our country's founding. And so when I talk about the historical significance, this is a far greater weight that I believe to our community's history, but if not the country's history. And so for me, that is a big factor in this project. And second to it, the density and the buffer. It has to, as someone always said, there has to be a stop somewhere. And I've always encouraged anybody in the commission to walk that period. So you come off the busyness of the post road with the frantic speed. As you get past the Masonic Lodge and you go past First Church, I have to believe just by the architecture and the context of it, it is a reminder that this is an integral part of Fairfield. And I think for a town, we have to balance that against the fast pace of progress and to determine that the greater good over time. But at the same time, I want to applaud members of our Affordable Housing Task Force and efforts that have been made in the years by our first selectman and through this organization and our Fairfield Housing Authority, that we can always do better. But this is a town that had a history of accommodating and supporting housing opportunities for everyone. We need to do better. Everyone needs to do better, but this is not an example of it, at the risk to our history and the possibility irreparably damaging that, because there's no coming back from it. I hope I answered your question, Commissioner Braun.
Any other? If you're not speaking, please mute your line. Thank you very much. I'm still getting feedback. Steve Ramsey.
Oh,
Can you mute Mr. Ramsey?
that's you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other commissioners that have any questions for Senator Wong? Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for your work.
Next on the list is Mr. Ramsey. So please unmute Mr. Ramsey's line Emmeline. Thank you.
He has to go on the 29th, I believe, so he's all set.
Walt Shaw asked to 29th.
He wants the 29th also.
Also, okay.
So I don't think that we actually have anybody else in line.
All right, so let me just put it out there. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to be heard on this item? We will hold this hearing open until the 29th. All right, hearing none. Then, Attorney Smith, thank you and your client for your cooperation courtesies in granting the consent to holding this public hearing open until our next regular meeting on the 29th. Confident that we will be able to conclude at that time. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.